Good evening. I'm Commissioner James Patterson, Audit Committee Chairperson. I'd like to call the Audit Committee meeting of the whole to order. The agenda for December 3rd, 2024. There are no speakers or comments on the agenda. Item number 3, review and acceptance of the minutes from the June 4th, 2024 Audit Committee of the Whole. The minutes from the June 4th, 2024 meeting are available online. Can I have a motion to accept the minutes?
So moved.
Commissioner Elliott motioned it, and Commissioner Malloy seconded it. Are there any comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Any nays? The ayes have it. I would like to turn over the next section of our agenda to Ms. Henry Wheeler to facilitate our external auditors from Drescher and Malecki.
Thank you. Can you hear me? So the board has received a draft copy of the financial statements for the year ended June 30th, 2024. Those were given to you on November 15th. Tonight, our external auditors from Drescher Malecki are coming to provide a presentation on the overall financial results. And I'd like to turn it over to Drescher Malecki.
I feel good.
So good. Oh, I'm glad you like it.
Could someone mute that's online, please?
Good. All right.
Thank you.
Good evening. How is everyone? All right, so Matt Montalvo from Drescher Malecki here to present the results on the school district's June 30th, 2024
I don't know
audit.
if that microphone is working.
Yep. Does that work? Test. There we go. All right. So here to present the results of the audit for this school district's year ended June 30th, 2024. We have a PowerPoint presentation. If you could advance to the first slide. Okay. So when we were back here in June, we did the planning meeting with the audit committee, which laid out our audit plan. That's how we approached the audit. The first thing we clarify, with an external audit, our approach is really looking at a snapshot in time. So June 30th, 2024, those balances, that's what we're auditing. We're auditing the activity for that year end. So it's a backwards look. We don't put an opinion on the current activity or your current budget. It is a snapshot to essentially gain confidence in the balances as of the end of that prior fiscal year. So going forward, when you're going into the budget process for the upcoming year, you have reliable balances that you as a board or outside third parties can rely upon. So that's kind of the objective of the external audit. We look at certain risk areas, which we'll get into in this slide here. We talked a lot about the key risk areas being cash and investments. These are some of your more in larger balances or more significant balances. When you look at your cash and investments, about $370 million of assets within those liquid assets. Your receivables, your revenue recognition, about $100 million at year end that's due to the district. So when we look at these key areas, we want to verify that this money either exists as it relates to cash and investments. On the receivable side, is this money going to come into the district? So a lot of our audit tests surrounding those areas are in reconciling those amounts and looking at those records to support those pretty significant balances. As it relates to the long-term or contingent liabilities, this is more where you're projecting out what is the district's ultimate liability as it relates to the significant areas being workers' compensation, your other post-employment benefits. So these are the projected benefits for retirees, health insurance. A lot of these really large liabilities that are projected out into the future, you rely on actuaries or outside third parties to project those liabilities because they are pretty significant for your financials. And then another key area is your federal and state grants. This is more of a compliance focus because your compliance within these programs really relies on the future funding of federal and state grants, which is a very significant part of your financial operations. And then some of the other key areas we looked at: capital assets, capital projects, certainly your fund balances, and then your short-term liabilities. So these are the areas we talked about in June as focus areas. On the next slide, just kind of more of a high-level focus, your overall risks. There's always a risk, even if you have the best policies, procedures, and processes, there's always a risk of override, a management override of those controls. So we look at a lot of how the systems work, how the financial inputs get to the balances or that final step in your accounting records. And we did not have any findings in the management override. When we talk about cash and investments, receivables, we looked at those reconciliations. We viewed a lot of the bank statements, the bank activity, and then on the compliance side, each federal program that is subject to audit has specific guidelines. So we look at the federal guidelines, compare that to what the district is doing, and we did not have any compliance findings in those areas as well. And then, as I mentioned earlier, on the long-term debt side, a lot of it is based on actuarial studies or outside third-party specialists that provide those estimates. On the next slide, kind of the last piece of our required communications, what we clarify is our responsibility. So I talked a little bit about the external audit, what the objective is. So what we do clarify is, in accordance with our standards, our objective is to provide an opinion or a report on your financial statements. So we don't take any responsibility for the books and the records. Management is responsible for preparing all of the information. We come in as an independent third party and provide that opinion on the financial statements. So we did plan on moving forward with and issue a unmodified opinion on the financial statements. So that's a clean opinion. So in our professional opinion, the records of Rochester City School District for the year ended June 30th, 2024, fairly stated or fairly represents your financial position. So in other words, you can rely on that information as a board, as well as third parties can rely on the district's records. We did not have any issues within your policies or estimates. There were no uncorrected or corrected misstatements. And then as far as other matters, we did not have any difficulties in performing the audit. So there's a lot of coordination when we look at those significant balances, the different departments, the compliance areas. So it took a lot of coordination. We really appreciate the help of management and staff in performing the audit. Pretty smooth audit, but again, no difficulties, and we received full and open access to the books and the records. Any questions on the communications, kind of our required items, before we get into more of the financial highlights?
I'll start with individuals that are online. I see Beatrice LeBron is online. I don't know who those other two are, but Vice President, if you have any questions.
No, not at this time. Thank you.
Okay, I'll start at my right and move to my left if there are any questions. There are no questions.
Okay, so we'll go to page 4 of the slides. This is your financial statement highlights. We do a 5-year trend. This is your general fund revenues versus expenditures. So this is based on actual activity that has come in. Like I said, it's a snapshot looking backwards. So 5-year trend, revenues in blue, expenditures in red. So a pretty favorable trend over the last 5 years, where your revenues have exceeded expenditures in each of the last 5 years. For the year ended 2024, revenues exceeded expenditures approximately $61 million. So that is the amount that your general fund balance grew during 2024. So it went from about $224 million of total fund balance to $286 million approximately at the end of the year. So like I said, a very, very favorable trend over the last 5 years. On the next slide, we break this down a little bit further, show your major revenue sources, some of your major expenditure uses. You can see what jumps out at you, that state and federal sources, that's the majority of your revenues, about right around 80% historically. You did see about a $33 million increase in state and federal revenues. State aid, your ARPA funding would be within those. And then you did have some other small increases. Certainly, a lot of government entities right now and school districts are taking advantage of the interest rates. Their cash balances are a little bit higher with those favorable increases, a little bit more interest earnings. And then on the expenditure side, you did see an increase of about $47 million from the prior year, mostly in that that transfers out. That was due to the capital project, your new software implementation with Oracle. But you've been able to control the expenditures as compared to the last fiscal year. So you can see the change in fund balance. That's at $61 million. And then on the next slide, we'll talk a little bit about how that has impacted your fund balances. So this is a 5-year trend of your total fund balance. We break it into restricted and unrestricted categories. And you can see a pretty good growth in fund balance over the last 5 years. So where you were at in 1920 with unrestricted fund balances of around $70 million, you can see how that has grown to just over $254 million in the unrestricted category. So you're in a much more stable position than you were 5 years ago. On the next slide, we talk put that in a little bit of context. What we do is we compare that to your budget or your next year's budget, and in this case, it would be the budget that you're currently operating under. So we look at what is the ratio or percentage of your unrestricted fund balance to your budget or your next year's budget. So at the end of 2024, you're at about 27.7%. That essentially gives you the liquidity to operate, gives you that cushion when you're paying your operating expenses, your contingencies. A lot of the best practices start at like a minimum of 2 months, so that would be around 16.67% as a minimum. And you can see over the last 5 years, you're in a much better position than you were even prior to that. We did compare it to some of the other large city school districts as far as the most recent data available. So some of the 2024 data wasn't available. But you're right around that, a little bit lower than some of the city school districts in Buffalo and Syracuse, but very close. So from a conclusion standpoint, you're in a stable position. But as we can see, the other thing that kind of jumps out is when you look at your subsequent year's budget from 24 to 23, that certainly jumps out at you, that increase from $836 million to $917. So being at 27%, I think that's a good thing with the challenging budgets that you'll have in the upcoming year and the years to come. Because that is the trend we're seeing as those federal stimulus dollars are starting to wind down. Your budgets are going to become more challenging. So it's good to be in that stable position at 27% versus 5 years ago where you were below 10%. Quick snapshot on some of your other funds. So the special aid fund, this is where you capture all those federal and state programs. Your revenues within that was about $254 million, an increase of about $15 million from the prior year. I would anticipate as, again, those stimulus funds start to wind down, that number is going to go down. But the way that fund operates is it's totally reimbursable basis, so there's a zero fund balance. Your school food service, a small decrease of about $1 million, but still in a stable position. That is, again, very reliant on state and federal aid to fund those operations. Your debt service fund, about $81 million you move over annually to pay off those debt service payments. It grew a little bit, about $4 million, but those are all restricted for future debt service within the debt service fund. And then just a quick highlight on the capital projects fund, you had about $28 million in capital outlay. So that's your investment in your major capital projects. That's up from $23 million in the prior year. Just to highlight a few other reports that we issue. So we issue that opinion or that report on the financial statements. We also issue a report on the federal single audit. So that's your compliance with the federal program. So we actually do a separate compliance audit and look at whether it be your ARPA program, the education, and all those funds that are included in the Education Stabilization Fund. We also tested the Title I program. So we look at your compliance with those funds as well. And then we also issue a report on the extra classroom activity funds. That's a cash audit. And then an agreed upon procedures on the contract for excellence through New York State Ed. Some of our observations moving forward. Every year, you're subject to new accounting requirements or accounting pronouncements. These are the ones that you'll have to implement in the future. The GASB 101, we'll talk about a lot at the next planning meeting up in June as the next year's audit is upcoming. That would be the one out of the list that might change your financial statements a little bit, but it's not going to necessarily change the way you fund your compensated absences. These are those leave payments that you pay out or accrue for sick, vacation time, those sorts of things. And then as far as any other observations, we did not have any reportable audit findings. So we look at it as a level of a material weakness or a significant deficiency. Those are the two definitions that we operate under our standards. We did not have any reportable findings. When we look at the challenges going forward, I talked a little bit about the budget challenges with the ARPA funding wrapping up. What we're seeing with other large city school districts as well as government entities right now, staffing has become a big issue as far as just transition planning, succession planning. When you have a lot of knowledge in one particular area or department and that knowledge retires, having backup and having those policies and procedures and that planning in place really helps to reduce your risk going forward. And then another area, certainly you have a pretty significant project with implementing a whole new financial software. That has been, in our experience with government entities, that has been a challenge just because you're really almost rebuilding your accounting system and trying to bring forward all the things that worked and implement things that, that the new software offers. So that can be a very difficult process and, certainly something, to proceed cautiously with. So those are the overall observations. Like I said, through the financial statements, the district's in a stable position as of June 30th, 2024, to handle those budget challenges going forward. Any questions or concerns?
Anissa, do we want to take questions at this point in time, or? Okay. So let me begin with a few things here, or highlight a few things. And just for the public, GASB, the Government Accounting Standards Bureau. So just so the public, even I had to look it up, but
Yeah.
but so the public understands when you were speaking relative to Screen 12, what you meant by the GASB statement, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, so the Governmental Accounting Standards Board, that is essentially the standard-setting body for government entities, your accounting standards. So that's what you're required to implement. That's how you're required to maintain your books and records based on GASB's rules and pronouncements. So every year they come out with new standards. Now they're up to 104. So you have 104 accounting standards that you have to abide by and present your financial numbers in accordance with those standards. Yep. That's probably the best way I could hopefully describe it, because even someone who works with us every day, there's some confusing things in in that terminology.
Okay, thank you. Also, I'm glad you mentioned, the budget has to be more, the budget will become more challenging due to the stimulus funding being, certainly the ARP funding that's gone away. So that had been noted, mentioned to the administration, the prior administration, being led by another superintendent, that We had to prepare, for the future when that funding did go away, so hopefully we've done that.
Yep.
But just so the public's aware of, that's when you talk about stimulus funding, you're talking about the state and federal funding, the ARP and SRSA funding.
Yep, exactly.
Okay, and so I'm going to take questions. I'm going to start once again up on the online screen.
Excuse me, Commissioner Patterson, I just wanted to mention our board clerk, Rahima Nguyen, is the other person, as well as Mark Potter, our financial consultant, just so you know who's online.
Thank you very much. All right, so we'll start with any questions Vice President LeBron has.
No, I don't necessarily have a question, but I do want to ask to put on the record now for the firm if they have any insights on the potential impact with the administration coming in Project 2025 and the Department of Education being eliminated, if there are any insights that they have at this time about what that will look like for us. And they don't need to necessarily answer it at this time, but I do want it on record that I would like them to give us some clarity if they have any.
Why don't we put that in the question log, and we can pose that to, a little later.
Yep.
Okay, thank
Yep,
you.
thank you for that comment, though.
All right, so we're going to start to my left this time. State Independent Monitor, do you have any questions? And no questions? Coming left?
No questions. Thank you.
None at this time.
So in reading what is the term called? I'm used to, what'd you call it? Yeah, I'm used to CAFRA, so
Yes.
got to get used to that name.
Yep.
In reading some of that, I saw that you noted that our student enrollment was down to 19,000. So we've been under the assumption that it is still in the 20,000, and that number came from the accountability. So my concern is that as the former superintendent had alerted us, is that over the years, we're going to be reducing, and student enrollment is going to be diminishing over time. And so the question becomes, what do we have to look out for when we have diminishing student enrollment, aside from the fact that we're not going to have the CAFRA, the ARPA and the cursor dollars? How do we need to prepare for that, for a kind of low enrollment as is projected?
Yeah, I mean, I think that certainly that's probably more of a, certainly a budget process question, because it involves so many different factors on both how are you generating revenue, because as we saw on the one slide, 80% comes through state and federal sources. And enrollment does play into that, certainly from the state aid side, excuse me. A lot of it is, I mean, really what you have control over is the expenditure side, and only to some extent. So it's really looking at how, obviously the main concern is that you're providing education, right? So, I would never make a statement of, cutting staff or anything like that. So the budget becomes a very difficult challenge from that standpoint, because it's so heavily reliant on personnel and those sorts of costs. So you got to look at other areas where, you can have cost savings or revenue generation outside of the state and federal aid. So it is a significant challenge. What I can say is your fund balance position at least puts you in a stable position to be able to handle those challenges and maybe absorb some of at least over the next couple of years, when you kind of, adjust the budget process.
Yeah, but let me put on record, you don't want to put it on record, but I will, that does mean that we may have to reduce staff. I mean, we just have to be clear about that and real about
maybe
that. When
the
80% of your
decisions, yeah.
budget is around personnel costs, and if we're losing students, then that means that we need to reduce staff. I'll just put it out there. That's a hard thing to say, but it is the right thing to say, because we have to make sure that we're doing our due diligence for future generations. So
Yep.
thank you very much.
That is the decision of the board for sure.
All right, Superintendent?
No questions. No questions at the moment. Thank you.
Okay.
Griffin.
Yes.
I'm sorry.
I just wanted to actually address what President Elliott said, and I totally agree that our staffing, for me, as I see, we have a lot of duplicate roles. So right now, and knowing that our numbers are down, that is kind of bothersome to me because that money could go into other areas to govern our children. And so to her point, I totally agree that that should have been something that should have been looked at yesterday. I think we've known for a while that the enrollment has been down, and we're sugarcoating that. And with you coming out with them, the actual numbers shows to the public the transparency and how the numbers are actually going down in our enrollment in the district. And that's very concerning because what's happening is the kids are leaving our district. They're going either to a charter school, suburban schools, because the parents are moving out, or they're going to private schools. So that is kind of damning to us because we are still not on the upswing as people would think that we are, and we're not. We are still not where we should be in giving our children what they need to be successful in the Rochester City School District. So I look forward to making that a way where we can keep them here and keep them vested in the city, and that is a goal that we should have number one on our list. Thank you.
For sure.
I just wanted to, if I may, Commissioner Patterson, thank you for the presentation. It was really helpful, and I know that your role tonight is really to level set and help us understand how our dollars are being generated, if we have a healthy balance, and whatever strategies or discussion points we need, that's with administration. So I do want to recognize that. But I appreciate the way you presented this information, and if I do have questions, I will submit them to the question log. Thank you.
Thank you. So moving forward,
So at this time, I did want to make sure the board has an opportunity. I know you've asked questions as it related to the presentation, which was on the ACFR. Specific to the actual document you received on the 17th, while there weren't material changes, there were little minor tweaks as far as ensuring all of the enrollment numbers lined up with the SED bed stay data, putting in the updated opinions and signed documents, et cetera. So the updated documents that are in board docs at this time, those secured because they're in draft format, are actually available to you, as well as any of the required communications from the auditors. Having the opportunity, if there are no additional questions on either the financial statements, the student activity statements, or the single audit, if there are future questions, these would be adopted by the board at the December business meeting. Feel free to either forward to the log or send to me directly so I'm aware that they're there, so that I can certainly respond to any questions that you have. I would like to defer back to Commissioner Patterson.
thank you. I'd like to receive a motion to advance the 2024 financial reports, including the annual comprehensive financial report, ESSER, the student activity fund extra classroom report, and the single audit report for consideration at December 19th, 2024 business meeting.
So moved.
Is there a motion? I think that was President Elliott, and it was seconded by
Malloy.
Commissioner Malloy. All in favor?
Aye.
Any nays? I should say, are there any comments? No comments?
Is Commissioner LeBron voting this evening?
She's not on screen, so.
Going to come in to vote or not?
Commissioner LeBron,
I wasn't going to come on camera, so I'm not going to vote. Sorry.
Okay, no problem. Thank you.
okay, so once again, all in favor?
Aye.
Any nays? The ayes have it. All right. Is there an executive session this afternoon or evening?
Are you on number 5, Commissioner Patterson?
I am. Okay. The fiscal accountability legislation allow the board to recess into executive session
Is that where we are? Okay.
close to the public for a confidential meeting with the external auditor. Can I have a motion?
I'm looking at the wrong thing.
And who was,
Jesus.
Simmons was the motion? Malloy was the
Who
second?
motioned?
I did.
I motioned, and Commissioner Griffin seconded.
It was Griffin? Was there a vote?
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Ayes have it.
So
So we're recessing into?
Executive session?
With the
We're back from executive session, and we're going to go right into the audit committee discussions item. I would like to ask Ms. Henry Wheeler to complete the next item on our agenda.
Thank you. I did include in the board docs the year-end claims audit report from Nyraki Smith. They're not presenting this evening, but that is there and available for you. They were presenting at our last meeting. So if you have any questions that relate to that report, please feel free to send me a question or any notes or concerns if any are outstanding. The other item I did want to bring to your attention is this is now year 5 with Nyraki Smith as the board's claims auditor, and therefore it is time to actually do another RFP for the claims audit process. So I did want to make sure that there was agreement from the board as it relates to moving forward. Certainly, Nyraki has been an excellent partner for us, and I hope that they're able to, come out in a positive way. But they have been honoring the 5-year pricing we had. We actually had our RFP back in April of 2020. And they have been our claims auditor since then. So I do need to, over the winter, have an RFP process, bring information back to the board with a July 2025 start for the claims audit, the next claims audit period. So that's what that is. The next item, yes?
I know we said to questions in the question log, but I'm looking at the letter, and if it's okay with the chairperson, I would like the superintendent to react to what their observations and recommendations are, because we have some invoices, some of these things, when they're submitted, are 90 days overdue. And so the superintendent was saying earlier that this has been reduced significantly, but I still want, if you don't mind, Chairperson, that Patterson, that the superintendent respond to what we're seeing here in terms of what their observations were, and also in terms of the recommendations, if that's okay.
That's fine.
Good evening, President Elliott. So in terms of the observations and recommendations that are before you on this document, what you see here is that sometimes services are rendered even before a contract or a requisition has been executed. This actually does happen in some districts and some organizations at times due to just lack of communication, or the bill comes too late and the services have already been rendered or passed. Generally, you all have already passed the resolution or contract and whatnot. But if it isn't at the beginning of the process, then what would normally happen is it would come later, and it comes as a confirming order, as we are paying for services that have already been carried out, even if you all as a board had passed it. To mitigate some of these things, the different departments have P cards. The P cards can be used up to $2,000. Anything under $2,000, you can use a P card to purchase the services, and it won't go through as a confirming order. If it is over $2,000, it needs to go into our concur system, and it would go in as a confirming order. You then get notification that we have confirming orders. And, basically, it's just like we're acting out of practice or out of policy. We need to make sure that we straighten up the processes. And these things do happen. They've been happening. The past 2 years, what we have done to sort of bring down the amount of confirming orders and this process from happening is we've actually been requiring individuals that do have the confirming orders to write a memo to explain why this is a confirming order. Because at times, again, it's not always on the fault of the district. It could be that the organization that we're getting support from or that's rendering the service did not bill us in accordance to our policies, and that's why it's late. So we're making great strides. The P card does help with smaller expenses. You will see sometimes there's a confirming order for $300. we could have paid that with a P card. And it's all about socializing within the organization to make sure that people are aware of what we can use the P card for and how and why, so on and so forth. But we work to get making that better.
So just an estimate, how many transactions or inquiries are there? Because we're looking at, in all of these, and I can't remember when we had our own staff around with the claims staff, how many transactions that needed to be processed, but I think it was substantial compared to where we are now. But still, what concerns me is that we want to make sure that people are mindful that they need to get this in timely when they can, when they receive it. And, also looking, you talked about the P card, and there's still about 460 inquiries that did not have supported documentation. Saying that, it was only 1% of that, but, I just want to keep that in the forefront, that we're doing our due diligence. Maybe what this is just human error and just systems, things that are out of their control. But I wanted to make sure that I addressed it, because as I mentioned to the superintendent, there are resolutions that we're being asked to approve contingent upon receiving all of the necessary documentation. And if I'm going to be approving that, when I see something like this, it sort of gives me some hesitancy around not voting in favor of that when I see that there are these kinds of delays. Now, this just may be, as I said, it may be minimal, but, I'm not sure about that, so. You wanted to say something?
I was just going to say it happens to many departments. The Board of Education also at times ends up on that document. And it's just the nature of, again, it's not always RCSD. It can sometimes be the vendor, But to your point, to see 1.3%, that's five out of 460. That's pretty good. I mean, from where we were, of course, we want to be at 0. And we'll work to strive that.
But these are the only ones that they tested, right? I mean, we've got far more.
100%.
Oh, okay, all right, thank you.
Sorry.
Thank
That's
you.
good.
Okay, moving along.
Okay, so also, we finished and was included in the board docs was a review of the Wilson Student Activity Fund. Generally, a lot of the paperwork compliance type items, not having a second set of books, making sure documentation was in order, documenting meetings, decisions, et cetera, and ensuring timeliness of deposits. The biggest challenge we have with student activity funds is actually having the students with their own second set of books. That happens across the board in most cases, as well as ensuring bank reconciliations are timely and approved. We've improved bank reconciliations by making the accounting department responsible for them, and they actually push them out to the various schools. So that ensures that we really know the actual funds available in the bank, and we oversee that from consolidated reporting. So we actually have a lens on any cash that is at the school level from that standpoint. Nevertheless, we did go into that school. One thing we will be following up on shortly is the administration of student activity funds to ensure the oversight on school-related funds across the district and see how that management is going, which is usually managed by the accounting department. So that is that. The audit department is still actively in human capital, performing testing in a number of areas, including things like hiring, onboarding, separation, discipline, vacancies, and doing substitute management follow-up. All of those things are going on right now as we're trying to round out the work, that body of work. This generally concludes where I'm at. Commissioner Patterson?
All right, so that concludes our meeting this evening as far as the audit committee. I would ask that all board members complete the survey. And let's see here. Yeah, can I have a motion to adjourn
So move.
by President Elliott and seconded by Commissioner Griffin? All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Take a 3-minute recess till policy. President Elliott?
5 minutes?
Griffin, 5 minutes?
Thank you. Hi, good evening. I am Commissioner Griffin, and I'm the Chair of the Policy Committee for the Rochester Board of Education. It is now 7:38 PM on Tuesday, December 3rd, 2024. This is the Policy Committee of the Whole. And before I get started, I just wanted to say something to the community and even to my commissioner. I wanted to say a couple of words in reference to the things that have been happening in the community and to families in the community of Rochester. So I'm just going to start, and I'm going to just do a little speech. It's not anything long, but I think it just needs to be said. Good evening, everyone. I want to warmly welcome each of you to our policy meeting tonight. I hope you all had a chance to enjoy the holiday. I would also like to take a moment to reach out to those who are experiencing the pain of losing a loved one or who have someone close to them facing any illnesses. This past year has been particularly challenging as we've lost several valued members of our district as well. Let's take a moment of silence together to honor their memories and to support those among us who are navigating through their grief. Thank you for sharing this moment. Now I'll go ahead and continue. I would like to approve the minutes, the motion to approve the policy COW meeting agenda.
So moved?
Thank you. Is there any discussions? All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Motion carries. And we do not have any speakers, so we'll just move right along. And I need the approval I need to approve the minutes from the August 6, 2024 policy of the COW meeting as well. Thank you. Any discussion? All in favor?
Excuse me, Commissioner Griffin. I didn't hear who
Opposed?
second.
You need, Rahima, I'm sorry, am I moving too fast?
No, I only heard Commissioner Simmons, but I think they clarified Commissioner Patterson, you seconded.
Commissioner
Thank
Patterson,
you.
second.
All in favor? Aye. Thank you. Now we're gonna need to review the NISBA policy recommendations. At this time, I will ask for General Counsel Neil to provide the NISBA policy recommendation updates.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Griffin. For this installment, NISBA did send 3 policy potential updates or recommendations. The first is 1120, school district records. This was actually the policy change that we expedited at the last meeting of the board. And so there were some changes to law regarding freedom of information law and what's required when we disclose certain records. So the district has already took care of that one. There's also a recommendation regarding students and personal electronic devices. The district actually does have, this is addressed to a degree in the code of conduct. And so the district does have some protocols, not to necessarily the level of detail, in this recommendation, and that's something that the district can revisit through the code of conduct, a policy process that's going on right now. And finally, there was a school safety plan and teams. There are some recommended updates. Again, that the school safety plan that team meets at least once a year, and to kind of review our safety plans and policies. So I think we do have a policy. I think our policy is 8135, and so elements of that recommendation. And again, these are recommended updates, not mandatory updates. So I think some recommendations from that could make its way into our safety plans for the next school year. Any questions? All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Counsel. Next, we'll have the Code of Conduct Committee. I will turn it over to Rahima for the Code of Conduct Committee updates. Rahima?
Yes, ma'am. Good evening, Commissioners and community. So I just want to briefly share that at this time, there are approximately 30 members on the Code of Conduct Committee. They have been meeting bi-weekly since October and are slated to end that work in February. And their meetings are moving to their virtual components. And then for right now, they have been really focused in on awareness. That's become a constant conversation, just ensuring that not just families and students, but district staff are also, aware of the policy and the policy process. So that continues to move forward.
Thank you, Rahima. Next, we're going to move on down to the new business, and it has to do with the fund balance. Did I do something? No, I'm just thinking about reflecting. Okay. At this time, we'll talk about the fund balance, which is a policy reviewed annually per its deliverables. At this time, there are no recommendations for revisions from administration. We have a motion to forward policy 6500 out of the policy committee. Can I get a motion to forward it?
So moved?
Second.
Thank you. Any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Next, we'll deal with the school board part 2, 2120.1 through 2325, and school board part 3, 2440 through 2530. As part of the policy calendar review, the school board policies 2120.1 through 2325 and 2440 through 2530 are up for the review tonight. Since these policies are specific to the board, they do not follow the normal policy review process to receive feedback from my advisory groups and administration. Is there any feedback or discussions needed for the policy 2120.1? No. For the educational goals and metrics? No? Is there any discussion for the 2160 school board legal status? No discussion? 2260, can I just group these? Do you want me to just group them? If no one has any discussion?
Yeah.
You absolutely can, Commissioner.
Okay. Okay. 2260, okay.
So the language is changed from his to her to there. Why are we doing that? Is that state policy, state law, that we have to change his or her to there?
So typically, I mean, I think organizations everywhere, and it is kind of federal and state law, in regards like Title IX and things like that, to have like more inclusive, kind of general language. And that is, as we review policies, there are those type of changes and tweaks to most of the policies. And it's occurred in policies that have come before the board already and will kind of continue to occur.
So there includes who?
Everybody?
I think everybody.
Everybody.
Who is everybody else besides his and her?
Commissioner, I mean, there's transgender, there is a whole spectrum of people out there, and I
They still need to identify as a woman or a man. So
Right.
that's up to
don't.
that's
No,
up
they
to each individual, not necessarily Commissioner. I think the language is as inclusive as we can make it, and that is the recommendation of the federal law and or state law.
President Elliott, do you want to further look into it for you're good with it? Okay, thank you. So does anyone have any questions regarding the new business and grouping these all?
I do have something around 2510.
Commissioner Simmons?
2510.
Okay, go ahead.
And this is the new board member orientation, which I think we can do a better job of how we orient board members, especially in hindsight coming on. I think the administration does a great job acclimating us and introducing themselves and their general job responsibilities. But I do believe, as we've come into better knowledge of governance and how we should be conducting ourselves as commissioners in this particular role, it would be advantageous, I think that's your word, Commissioner Griffin, of us to make sure we extend that knowledge to incoming commissioners on the front end to avoid some things. And there is a question I have around number 2, because I know this has been a conversation or point of contention on some levels around including incoming or new board members, including them in executive sessions. And I can see how that can be beneficial on some levels, because that's, those are where some conversations happen. However, I do believe we need to be mindful of what executive session is, because even as actual commissioners, I don't know if we've executed executive session as it should have been, right? And so as commissioners, we have, I think we're moving in a great direction now, so I don't want to belabor the past, but there have been hiccups around how we've handled executive session, and that's calling something lightly. So when you bring a new board member in, or a new person that's not yet sworn in, you do risk that. So I just want to open that for dialogue, if that's a possibility.
Can I respond to you? I think that's an excellent idea. If you have input, do you feel like you can provide that information to us so that we can definitely see how we can put that into the policy? So
My
we can
input is
review it to be put in the policy?
My input is to, and I'll digress to other board members, because I think I hear some other thoughts. Did you?
I think it's a great idea. I'm just saying, with specifically, what information do you want to add to that policy that so we can review?
What I'm saying is, we may need to exclude that from the policy. I'm not looking to add anything.
Okay.
I'm
All right.
saying, as we invite new folks in, how does that look, right? And
Okay,
how
got
are
you.
we being mindful, demure, very cutesy, no, I'm just joking. But how are we mindful, seriously,
No, I know.
around the executive session portion? I think that's a very light or delicate space.
Okay.
And we might want to reconsider that being language included in this document, is what I'm
Okay,
saying.
got you.
Commissioner Griffin?
Go ahead, President Elliott.
Is that something that we perhaps can, in our, whoever governs training, to get guidance from Council Ray City Schools around?
Probably.
Jackie?
Go ahead. I'm sorry. I
you.
apologize. I was just writing what
Yeah,
Camille
I
was saying.
totally agree with Commissioner Simmons on this. I would love for us, if we could, to have something in here that specifically addresses board governance in some way, a bullet perhaps added, or training on the adopted board framework for governance, so that there is really clear language that indicates the need for an incoming board member to fully engage with the adopted governance model. So we'd have fewer disruptions, I think. And maybe, I don't know if there's a way that we can ask them to go through training of some type, or an introduction to the training that we've all had in that process. I don't know what that's going to look like at this time. But I think for continuity's
that's a
sake,
good idea.
long after we're gone,
I actually think that's a great idea, because I think it would definitely help coming on board. I know it would have helped me. Honestly, it would help, and I know it would help others as well. So I think that is definitely a great idea for anybody coming in to do that training first, and then go on with the other training that we have set aside for new individuals coming in. I definitely agree with that. Go ahead, Commissioner Santiago.
Yeah, I don't disagree with anything that's been said. I know for me as a new board member coming on, it was good to be able to see the functions of the board, including the executive sessions. But I do think that, as you said, there could be possible concerns when it comes to that. Certainly, seeing that we don't, unless we have the onboarding from legal counsel beforehand, you don't know the legal requirements, as you sit in these places and sit in these rooms. And so I think it is something to be discussed. But also with the discussion on adding into the policy for new board members to be included into a training from our governance partners, I think we also have to keep in mind with that the financial aspect, because I remember us having that discussion. And how much our governance people would charge, for us to do that. And then also sustainability. If we write into the policy, how open do we have to leave it, seeing the fact that we may not always have, the partners that we have now as our governance partners. And
That's,
so,
if I may, that's exactly where I was going
That's
with
what
it.
she
It
said.
wasn't so much saying the great council for,
Yeah.
am I saying that right? Council for Great City Schools doing the training, because I definitely hear that. This was for long-term sustainability around how we do it. So I know when Commissioner Malloy, what policy were you, or?
I simply said the adopted governance framework, whatever that is, or whichever organization, really is not important. It's just an agreement to develop an understanding of an adopted framework.
What I was trying to say, I'm sorry, guys, is when Commissioner Malloy, what I was trying to ask her was, she was over a particular onboarding process. When commissioners came in and put together pretty good structure around how new commissioners were onboarded and what we were introduced to. I forget what lens that was from. And now in hindsight, there are some additional opportunities that I think it would fall on us as a board collectively to identify some of those learnings and teachings. So not so much the council doing it, but us.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And what we've learned and extending that. So those are two pieces, that piece of the onboarding and removing the executive language, or if other commissioners agree with that. Those are the only two things I'm saying.
just want to say I thought that we were speaking specifically to our governance partners. But I think it is a good idea because governance is something that has to be taught. Coming onto the board, we had the onboarding on the administration, what the administration does, but not much on exactly what a board member can do, what governance looks like, what budgeting looks like, what the audits look like. And so I think that people will be able to come in better prepared if we did have something like that.
President Elliott, I'm sorry, and then Commissioner Malloy.
Okay. Are you first? Oh, thanks.
Oh, I'm sorry, State Monitor,
No problem, thank you. I can wait. Go ahead.
I didn't see you, and I got my
I was just
glasses on,
going
I
to
apologize.
piggyback on what Commissioner Santiago was saying, simply that understanding, like, the difference between management versus governance is a critical skill for any board member. Thanks.
Thank you for the opportunity. I just want to say that I agree with Commissioner Simmons. These commissioner-elect, they're not official commissioners yet. They don't have to follow the rules. The things that are discussed in executive session, most of them are personnel matters and should be confidential. So I do agree that they should be invited to board events, board meetings, committee meetings, and all that. But executive session, it's confidential discussion that take place.
Okay, I'm sorry, Commissioner Malloy.
I know that it has been past practice for commissioners after the general election. They have been allowed to sit in on executive sessions after that November date. And I think some of our prior leadership who are no longer here had
I know
encouraged that. But
yeah.
I would,
Sorry.
obviously I'll defer to our general counsel on this, but I think it sets a dangerous precedent and the potential of leaking of information, and always better to wait until someone actually takes office.
I do think that is going to, I think knowing how the executive sessions are ran and what they govern, I don't think it would be a good idea for someone to come in prior. I have to agree with Commissioner Simmons. That's something that should not be done at that time. That's just too much. I think we all agree with that.
No.
Well,
Can I have the floor?
no, yes, go ahead.
No, we don't all agree. So I think that if you want an election and you want to get started ahead, of taking the seat in January, you've already won the election. If you're going to go into executive session, there's something that we can draw up or have drawn up that they could sign indicating that what is said in here is very private and privy to the individuals in the room. It just gives that individual an opportunity to, see exactly what happens in executive session, see exactly what happens in the board meetings, and then make a decision. Thank you.
I'm sorry, can we go to I'm sorry, who's on? Is that Vice President LeBron, would you like to speak? I'm sorry, can you hear me?
Yeah, I
I'm
just
sorry
want to
about that.
agree. No, it's okay. I just raised my hand. Thank you. I just want to agree, though, that I do think
How was he done?
commissioners-elect should not be allowed into executive session. Even drawing up a contract means nothing. What are we gonna do, sue a fellow commissioner because they leaked, went public with information from, we can't do that. That doesn't even make sense. We can't put someone under a contract as a school district onto oncoming commissioner. We can't even really hold each other accountable around that piece right now as electeds. We have a commissioner who went on WXSI and leaked executive session information, and this board couldn't even come to the vote to give that individual consequence. So I absolutely unequivocally support not having commissioners elect. I think it's messy. I think it becomes a legal nightmare, and there's not a lot of repercussions that we can take to protect individuals and some of the conversations that take place. And my biggest concern would be confidential information about kids and their situations, or families, or staff. And so, no, I would not be comfortable with that. I've actually never been comfortable with it, never have agreed with it. But to Commissioner Malloy's point, previous leadership operated that way.
Thank you very much, Vice President LeBron. I do apologize. Commissioner Patterson had other words.
Like I said, I finished with my statement, but they're going to take the seat anyhow. Individuals, as we know, that are sworn to keep things privia in executive session have leaked things out. Yes, that's true. So if you have an individual that he's going to be in that seat in less than a month, if they want to come in and, see exactly what they're getting themselves into, maybe, knowing what happens in executive session may prohibit them, or not prohibit, but maybe they'll say, hey, I don't want to be a part of this, and resign. Who knows? But the point is that it's all in your character. It depends on, you yourself. Are you the type individual that, is going to do things or say things in executive session or release information, or you're not? So it's just the person itself. So, like I said, I always thought it was a good idea to have onboarding, and anything we can do to help another board member understand his or her role, which is governance. So if we can give them a head start, for me, I don't have a problem with it. I know certain board members do, and you're welcome to your opinion. But my opinion is I don't really see an issue with it.
Thank you. Is anyone like to say anything? Okay, President Ellie, now you want to speak? Okay.
Well, I wanted to speak before,
I
but I
know.
was
Go ahead.
gracious to.
Go ahead for being so
speak.
patient. Thank
I
you.
just want to make sure that it's on the table. I support this, but all of us come in with our own backgrounds to this, and we have to be who we are until we learn to be a governance, till we learn to be a board leader, and we have to give people grace. I know how I came in 19 years ago, right? Because I come out of the fight organization. And so, but it is important that we are allowing people the time to transfer from being a community activist, not that they give that up, but then understanding that their role as governance has to also be as equal to their governance, to their community activism, and then that it exceeds it some. Because now we're in these official positions. And so it's just important that anytime there's a new board, there's going to be, you got to be able to work together. And there's going to be conflict in the beginning of this. There's, that whole thing around the stages of,
Storming, norming, performing.
yeah, of performing.
Dynamics.
You start off, on in a rocky space. And so giving each other time in order to come on in is important. And so I just wanted to ensure that while this is good and this is going to mitigate some of that, we still have to allow people to come in from who they are, and then to be able to be transformed to this leader in this role.
Yeah,
Thank you.
absolutely.
Thank you.
I have a question.
I just want to put out there, these are just up for review. These are just moving forward out of policy.
Yeah.
So we do have time to vote on them and make changes. But this is a very good discussion, and we could take that into account. Commissioner Simmons, you had another statement?
Yeah, and then I saw General Counsel's hands, but I'll digress to you to call on him. But I wanted to know what the process is for tabling this or whatever we need to do to have additional conversations so that
Right.
we're on a unified page. Because I do want folks to come in well-prepared, but I
Right.
also want to make sure we're not creating landmines, so.
And like you just said, we do have time to review this and make the changes and update. I would like everyone, like tonight from what you said, I did jot a lot of the things down. I'll send an email out to go back through with everyone to see if that's what was covered and if we need to tweak anything, and then we can go through the policy to see what things need to be changed, based on the vote, and then we can do that accordingly. But this is just a review of the policy, so we do still have time to make the changes, and it's not set in stone yet. Counsel, you have a question? Statement?
Right, so, to that point, this is, and the board clerk can correct me if I'm mistaken, this is just, this policy is gonna go through its readings right before it's finalized, so the board will have an opportunity to weigh in and make tweaks to the policy before it becomes final.
Correct. So the policy is now in committee for you all to have discussions and make changes and recommendations to the language, so that once it's forwarded out, it is representative of what the board seeks to amend the policy to. So if you all are now having discussion, and based on what I've been jotting down, it seems that there's a majority who are in support of removing the second clause from that policy. That would be done so that it could be forwarded out, and you all would then go through the readings.
And thank you very much, Chair, because my next statement was going to be, as I know the board clerk and her team were taking careful notes on the board's position and statements on this, and in the next iteration, I know that will come. As it pertains to the law on this, the law essentially says anyone authorized by the board can go into an executive session, right? So whether or not this is spelled out in a policy, the board can invite pretty much any individual they want into on an executive session. However, as the state monitor also pointed out, there are certain things that are covered in an executive session that a person could not be privy to, right? Certain things made confidential by state law, like certain student records or personnel discussions. So maybe the clause is, as I read it, is overbroad because it kind of says all. But it sounds like it will be moved anyway if it is completely removed. But in any event, the board would still have the power to invite individuals on a whatever basis, case-by-case basis, to an appropriate executive session like the board has now.
Would that be it? Okay, so I just want a motion to move School Board Part 2, 2120.1 through 2325. And Part 3, 2440 through 2530. Motion?
Excuse me, before you all do that, just for clarity on 2510, as you're forwarding it out, are you forwarding it without clause 2 or as it currently stands?
So should we remove, thank you, Rahima, should we remove that one? Or should we go,
I thought there was going to be some.
More discussion.
So,
More
right,
discussion.
So I think what would be more appropriate to see another draft.
Okay.
At the first reading.
Okay.
And then act on it then.
okay, so you want to just table these?
No, it's not.
No, it could move.
You're doing it right, so it's going to be forwarded out, but.
Yeah,
my
okay.
recommendation in regard.
Okay, I
to the
thought so.
First question is to forward it out as is.
And then,
at the first reading.
okay.
You will
Make
see
the,
that
make the,
amendment.
okay, thank you. So I still do need a motion.
So moved?
Second?
Thank you. Commissioner Malloy and Commissioner Simmons, thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Opposed to 2510.
We're gonna review
Forwarding
that
it for
later.
discussion, that's it.
We're still making, this is just to move it out of policy into review.
He voted no.
And Patterson?
Okay. I just want to make sure we understand what's going on. Okay. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
Smack on them like that.
Motion carries, sorry.
Excuse
Now
me,
we're
Commissioner
gonna
Griffin.
refer this over to Rahima for the board reports and deliverables.
Very clear, Commissioner Patterson, you changed your no vote on 2510 to yes, or is it still no?
Yes.
I do want to vote on 2260. It's a no for me.
But we're not changing
I
anything yet.
understand.
Okay.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying.
You have to explain it to me, again, President Elliott, I'm learning here. So why was I not allowed to vote no on, what was it, 20?
If you're okay with it moving, are you okay with it moving
Moving
on
forward,
forward
I
for the
guess, right?
discussion?
Right.
I'm not even willing to move it forward for a discussion, to tell you the truth.
Gotcha. All right.
So,
That one was, okay, that was 2260, you said, President Elliott?
2260.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, everyone. So, and Commissioner Griffin, we've moved on to board deliverables and reports, correct?
Yes, I'm sorry,
ma'am.
Rahima,
No.
yes, that's correct.
You're fine, thank you. So at our business meeting, each commissioner was provided with a printout of the document that is attached to board docs. And this document is reflective of all of the current policy deliverables that you all expect the administration to either provide reports on, do some kind of data dive, or other work related to the policy. This ties back to our August conversation, and it started in finance, around the amount of board reports that the administration generates for you all. And at that time, you just received a summary of all of those report names, the associated policy, and the timeline. So this is an expanded look at that summary list. And this one additionally includes what the reporting requirement is, as well as if this is just from board policy, if it's a state or federal requirement, and some time frame information. And so the hope is that there'll be discussion around what board deliverables and or reports you all feel are no longer necessary. So before, I just want to add that these deliverables are included in every policy review. So for instance, every time that these policies come up, you all have an opportunity to address the deliverables. That has not really been done through any of the policy processes, so that's why it's kind of being brought to you all separately and for discussion around how you would like to move forward. Commissioner Griffin, Commissioner Santiago has a question.
Okay, I'm sorry, Commissioner Santiago?
Yeah, so I was looking through this, and it looks like majority of these deliverables are coming from state requirements. And there are some, of course, that, from what I've read so far, that are required by the board, but some of them are literally the board's responsibility. So one of them I saw with the financial accountability, and that's one of the board's responsibility. Then the other, on some other things. So I'm still looking through, but I see majority of these are state/federally required. And so I'm just wondering, when it comes to that, which ones specifically are holding the administration back for these not holding back the administration, but creating more responsibilities for the administration that's not required by the state that may be able to be removed. But at the moment, I haven't seen many.
Are you finished? Okay. Does anyone else have any questions or statements in reference to the code of conduct? Commissioner Malloy?
Thank you. I just wanted to agree with Commissioner Santiago. I'd love to know if administration had any concerns about some of these asks. Like, for instance, I'd like to know more about the civic education or former values education, as well as the service learning or civic engagement. They don't seem to be state or federally required. So I would love to know more about what that's entailed, how much time that takes people to prepare such reports, if anything. And that's all for now.
Okay. Anyone else have any questions or concerns? Superintendent, sorry, Demarios, I do apologize. Do you have a question?
No questions. I just wanted to acknowledge the two thoughts that were brought to the forefront. I would honestly say the majority of the policies that are not in line with the board goals is too much in my book. Not that I am scared of additional work or anything of that nature. It just takes us away from the actual managing of student outcomes. Not to say that there are some things that we cannot just simply, let you all know in a presentation and things of that nature. However, it does take us out of our way. For instance, that civic engagement policy, I mean, education policy, we've been talking about that for 3 years. That should not necessarily be a policy, as that's what every class
Let me just give some
should have.
historical background on that.
Understood, yeah.
That was something that was advocated by the community, particularly Bill Benet, who was very a leader in this community at one point, and something that former board member Powell also supported as well. So that's some of the history that's behind that. So.
Can I just make a comment?
What I'm gathering here is a lot of these policies, we don't really know the history of them, which makes it trying to understand why the reporting requirements are. So I think we just need to know more history behind them and why they're actually here. As President Elliott does have history behind her, she was able to advise us of what it actually meant, which gives you better understanding. So there's a lot of things here that we probably need to go back to the drawing board to really figure out. Go ahead, Commissioner Simmons.
Yes, thank you.
You're welcome.
Commissioner Griffin. And I think about policy and measurement, the saying, what gets measured gets done, right? And sometimes policies are enacted to ensure things actually occur in spaces where you think best practices should suffice. And oftentimes, the idea of best practices is just that, the idea. And sometimes people draw up policies to make sure you do what is expected of you.
Right.
And I think it's taken us on this road to over-policing a lot of things. So I'm still in support, very big support, I have candy in my mouth. I shouldn't have done that, of a policy diet. But I would think that's where a lot of some of these policies that are not making sense, or why did we create one? People were trying to make sure things get done. So how do we create a culture of best practices that will actually be followed? Right, because that's where we run into trouble.
Well, I think we need to challenge ourselves too, to understand which each one of them mean and how they play a significant part. And I think coming back to it again, we will probably be able to say, okay, now I know why this should be here. Now I know why they put that in there. To President Elliott's point, Commissioner Santiago.
Yeah, I just wanted to quickly say, I looked through a little bit more. And I will say that there are some of these that may be maybe not needed, but I'll say majority of them are, student focused and focused on the goals of the upcoming year and the plans to finish those goals. There's a couple like possibly 4095, 4311.2, and 5153 that could be not required as much. Of course, there would still be discussion about it. Certainly, parent preference and managed choice policies and stuff like that. But I don't think it has to be required through a policy. If the board wants to hear about that, I'm sure that we can hear about that on our own without a policy behind it. But many of the other ones, like let's say, for example, 4314.2. School to career or post-secondary education transition initiative, like that's something that's extremely important for our students. And of course, we would love to see what's being done in the district level to ensure that we are supporting our students while they're in our schools and preparing them for when they leave afterhand. And a lot of times, in this district, that hasn't been done. And so I know, and we speak about the historical context of a lot of these policies, and a lot of it is simply a board trying to find ways to ensure that they're knowing or holding accountability to what's going on, seeing the historical context of this district, failing many students. But there's a couple on here for sure that I believe that can be removed. But I think there's also some that I would say is justifiable because it's focused on either student outcomes or the board's responsibility, which is the financial oversight.
Thank you, Commissioner Santiago. I would say to your point, I think that if you see things on here that you feel they are in a need to stay, I think that would be your initiative to write down why you feel they should stay and to present it to us, to other commissioners, so that we can review it and go forward with it to see how it would be relevant to the district. So I appreciate that. We have somebody on the Zoom or the Teams. I'm sorry, I do apologize because I can't see your hand, but is Vice President LeBron?
It's okay. If I'm like anxious, I'll just speak, but thank you.
You're welcome.
I just want to add that, so one, I got a little bit confused where the conversation went. So seeking clarity, that's one. My understanding is we're removing the requirement of the administration to give these reports that one, by the way, really only sort of get dumped into board docs. We don't really have discussions about any of these reports that are sort of tied into our policies. Two, I do believe that it did come up with the governance training that um, they are not in agreement either that these are aligned with like what other districts do, practices, and how we should be governing. And so I just can I get clarity on this before? Because I think I'm a little confused as to whether we're discussing actually removing these policies or removing the report requirement back to the board.
Thank you, Vice President LeBron, for the clarity. I didn't think we were removing anything, but I could be wrong. Go ahead, Rahima or Council.
So the discussion is around how you all want to address the number of board reports that are required through policy. So not necessarily to remove the policies, at least that's not a discussion at this time.
Right.
But it's just for you all to review and have a conversation about how you want to address this. One of the ways is to look at it in this report in mass and make a decision there, or as policies continue to come up, that you all look at those deliverables and if those things make sense. I will note that a number of these, you all have not gotten reports, like to the civics education, for
Right.
instance, but it's still there, that requirement, and it consumes a lot of conversation around.
Thank you, Rahima. Does that answer your question, Vice President LeBron, or do you have another
Yes,
question?
thank you. So, no, I do want to then clarify my comments to go
Okay.
back to that I am in support of just removing the requirements in the format of having it tied to every single policy. I think when I think about even the workload of having to do that, and I want to give context to even the community listening, if I'm at my job on a single basis, I know that I am serving a specific number of individuals that I have to get placed into a shelter versus them going to DHS. If I had to stop and turn around every single month, and that's just two examples, and I just want to give that there are thousands of things happening all the time across the entire district at any given moment. But if we had to stop every single month to just someone having to sit down to type up a report that's coming to us, where some of us may not even ever open it. They've been on board docs. We don't even discuss these things, and to the board clerks, half of these things don't even come to us at all ever. They've actually never come. So it goes back to why I have a policy or a requirement of a policy that we ourselves are not even enforcing or participating in, right? What's the expectation that we're setting even for the employees down the line? So for me, I would love for us to have further discussion on this, but I would love for this further discussion to be tied with the people who are training us in governance right now, because I do think that this conversation ties heavily into how we move forward in that role, in those roles with that training. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice President LeBron. We have a question from Commissioner Santiago.
No, I just wanted to say, I believe some of these can certainly be removed as far as a requirement, certainly as we're going down the board governance. I think some of them should stay, and I stand by that, but I think that some of them can certainly be removed, and some of them are kind of like redundant when we're speaking about the board goals, getting presentation on the interim goals, in the middle, like that stuff is now becoming our norm. And so to have a policy requirement behind it doesn't make sense. But I do believe in some of these that they should stay there. And I also believe that the board, and this is not just for the current board, but also past boards, of course, should cut it down as far as how much we're requiring, but also stand on top of what we're requiring, because we are the board. And to hear that for all these years, a lot of these reports never came through, it's a board policy. And so the expectation is that it's being done. And so I think that it could certainly be cut down. Some of these are redundant and shouldn't be required. But I also believe some of them should stay, and the board should do our job to stay on top of making sure that we get those reports.
Thank you. Does anyone else have any questions or concerns? President Elliott.
So just to, I'm speaking out of both sides of my mouth to what you also said, Commissioner Griffin, around historical data. A lot of those people are not around.
Right.
Right? So there is no information because those people are not around. What I'm hoping that can happen is that we begin to, there are written documentation so that we understand workflows. And so when other people come in, that they don't have to try to figure it out on their own, that they have some kind of written documentation that will help to drive that. But I'm sort of betwixt and between in terms of the reporting, because I do think that it's part of our oversight.
Right.
On one hand, but I'm also understanding that this can be a humongous amount of work. But some of this is required.
Right.
You know, from other stakeholders that has to be done. So I'm looking forward to more discussion around it.
Yes.
Because there's certain things that I would like to know and like to have to report. Now, because I have been here a long time, I do know that historically what has happened is that a lot of people have given us all these reports, and they know that we're not going to read them, and they bury things in the reports. So that's been the game that has been played also, you know, historically, you know. So to sort of just to move forward what they would like to have move forward. So I'm looking forward to more discussion on it, but I do think it's important that there are checks and balances and that there are reports. The number is something that we can discuss further.
Thank you, President Elliott. And I have Commissioner Simmons and then Commissioner Malloy.
I love and appreciate what you just shared, President Elliott, and it just brings me to a space of sobriety where it's basically on us. That's not new, we know that, but again, we cannot allow past practices to prevail any further. So it's on us to make sure we are asking the questions that need to be asked, that we are doing the work that needs to be done, and that we are monitoring the things that need to be monitored. Because some of this looks like, it sounded like a good idea one day, and I think we're all guilty, including myself, of saying that. You ask for something, you're like, yeah, I want to see that in a report. And it was great in the meeting and in the moment, and you don't follow through. And so it requires us to move forward with some with some intentionality, I would say, so.
And I just wanted to add that I completely agree with everything that's been said, and ultimately, I can't wait for us to have more discussion with the Council of Great City Schools, with our coaches, when we start talking about our policy diet in the spring. You know, whatever report we're asking for, and we won't get into specifics here, is it helping us drive instruction ultimately and get those student outcomes? Are we seeing achievement increase across our district? And if it's not directly related to student achievement and improvements, we might heavily consider not having a report on that, but that doesn't mean that we don't have specific oversight that we need to keep track of, which we should be doing, but do we need to take an administrator away from their charge, which is, you know, our charge as a board here, but we're here to educate kids. And we want to make sure that administration has every available moment to meet those goals that we've set. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to go to the superintendent, and then I'll go to Commissioner Santiago.
I was just going to say, I do respect what each and every single one of you have said, but I do want to reiterate, and it would behoove me not to say any report that is not going to yield those goals that we have is taking us away from our jobs. And as much as I like the beauty of a report and I like presenting and things of that nature, if it's not going to ultimately yield 3 through 8 student achievement or 9th grade 5 or more credits, it's not that it's not important, it's just not as important right now. But I would like to make a recommendation, Madam Chair, if I could actually bring this document to my executive cabinet for us to actually all look and offer recommendations as to what is viable and what is not. For instance, personnel authorizations, I don't think that's something you all are willing to not have come as a resolution. as of right now, so it's something that probably wouldn't be taken away. It's it's on here, but you know, civic engagement or instructional goals, like certain reports could possibly be just sunset, and we can include it in some other format in some way, shape, or form.
You're very welcome. And Commissioner Santiago?
Yeah, and so I wouldn't disagree, and of course we have to do our best, you know, to allow the administration to do their work and not to pull them away too much from the work. At the same time, while having a balance of accountability and a balance of knowing where the changes are being made, and if the changes are being made in certain areas, and so. You know, as I said before, and we're speaking a lot about, you know, student achievement, and a lot of what I'm seeing, you know, throughout these policies are student achievement. But like I said, you know, some of them aren't, but majority of them are student achievement or financial oversight, which is one of our responsibilities. And so I think some of them are redundant to the new governance model that we're going to, and so of course that can be removed. And we should have a small list of, you know, a small list of the presentations that we require, just as the state has a requirement, you know, just as, you know, the board still is the oversight for this district. And so we still, as a board, need to have that and have accountability to ensure that the policy is being followed. And I think the problem with the past few boards is you have so many of these requirements. How do you make sure that those requirements are being presented, or those requirements and the information of those requirements are coming to the board in a way that is digestible to us? In comparison, if we bring this down to a small list, we know what we're expecting, and we can hold accountability for the administration to bring that to us. And so I think it definitely needs to be cut down, because these are a lot. But there has to be a balance, and I just want to make sure that like that's what we're going into while we're going through the governance training. Not the board shouldn't be doing anything, but the board should be focusing more on these areas. But there's a balance of accountability and allowing the administration to do the work. And so I just want to make sure, and I'll be a big advocate as we go through the governance training, of a good balance between both, between the board having, you know, its oversight and what the board needs to be doing as we sit up here to represent the community, understanding where our education is and where our education has been, and the relationship between the superintendent and the board. We have, you know, a good relationship now, but there's past superintendents who have misled this board, who has led this board in the wrong directions and led the district and failed many kids because they did that. And so we have to make sure that we're doing our accountability, so there's none of those areas where we're failing more children. And so I just believe that there has to be a balance. And I do agree that some of these have to be cut down, but I wouldn't say all of them.
Yeah, because I'm still
Okay.
feeling some
I'm sorry, President Lee, you want to say something?
pain for some past decisions. So
Yeah, I think that
just
we've
wanna put that
all
on the table.
been able to express our views on this. Collectively, we all received it. We all appreciate everyone's voice and vision on the board going in the right direction. State Monitor Jaime Alizar, do you have anything to say?
Thank you. I just want the board to be careful with all these policies. These should be policies to increase student achievement and focus on student outcome, not to micromanage everything that is happening in the district, because you're not going to be giving the superintendent and the staff the opportunity to do their work to get the student achievement up in the district.
With that being said, the state monitor, I would love to, knowing that you have a knowledge base and understanding of a lot of what is being said here, I would like to have an opportunity to sit with you and meet with you to go over that, as well as with the superintendent, to see where we would fit in, how we could address the commission, all of us as commissioners, and not overstep ourselves in removing something that would be beneficial to us in moving forward. So I do appreciate that. Thank you all. Is anybody else online want to say anything at all? Okay, thank you.
No, thank you.
If I could very quickly say, like, some of these decisions the board has to make.
Hold on one second. We're gonna move forward because we've been on this a little long. I don't want
You
to
asked
keep
if
on
there
this.
was any other statements, so.
Rahima, that's it, right, on this one? I just want to go ahead and move forward.
No, that's no
'Cause
problem.
we still
That's
have
no
to go
problem.
on to
That's no problem.
the unfinished business. So,
Yeah. So I can jump right in if you like, Commissioner Griffin. I'm going to direct everyone's attention to policies 9110 and 9260. There's a couple of slides just to help guide the conversation. So if you are recalling related to policy 9110, which is the employment opportunity policy. In your August 6th committee meeting, there was a discussion related to a specific clause in that policy. At that time, it read, "Anyone who believes that they have been subject to unequal treatment shall notify in writing either the superintendent of schools or supervising director of human resources." So there was board discussion and response related to this, and you all had voted to keep this into committee. You wanted further research on the actions of the affirmative action officer to ensure that it was in alignment with the intent of the policy, because at that time, it was recommended by administration that that position be removed because it does not actually exist in our district. The administration came back with updated language, proposed language, and that reads now, "Anyone who believes that they have been subject to unequal treatment shall notify in writing either the superintendent of schools or chief of human capital or designee." The administration's response was that HC has embraced the principles and objectives of equal opportunity, diversity, equity, and inclusion, and that are aligned with what the law allows. This work has happened without and does not require anyone to be designated as an affirmative action officer. So the board needs to decide how you all want to move forward with the language for that policy.
okay, I just want to say something quickly about that policy. For me, I believe that we need to have a directory, a DEI in place for that. I still do not believe that we should have that verbiage removed and give it over to the superintendent or the human capital. I think we need a middleman in there. I think that it would be unfair for one to, or bias, in my opinion, to not have a DEI person in place that has equal grounds and is unbiased to the HR person and to the superintendent. So that is my take on it as chair, that I think that we need a DEI in place, and that should not be removed. That should be put in place. We've had it before prior, and I think that that needs to stay. I'm open for discussion.
I'm just confused on the DEI part.
It-
It's not in the policy, so if there's anybody who can explain.
Well, it is noted, what they want to do is remove that section from it.
Okay.
They want to remove the verbiage and then have it just for the superintendent or the HR chief to decide. You know, if somebody has some type of a problem with a issue, there's no middle person. They either speak to the superintendent or the human capital, and I don't think that that's, somebody would feel comfortable doing that. President Elliott?
Also, just in addition to our discussion around this language, we had gotten, there is this group, this political group that's considering suing our district because of our emphasis on ensuring that we have people of color that are in our district. So I would just, I just want to put that on the table. Now, does that bother me? They could sue us if they want to.
Right.
Because we're going to do what we have to do and ensure
Right.
that we've got people of color in our district, right?
Right.
But I'm also concerned about this climate that we're in, and that this, actually, that particular position of affirmative action was illegal. Am I correct with that, General Counsel? Was it not?
It's not. It is not. It is not.
Yeah.
So the Supreme Court ruled
Not
that in
ruled on.
college admissions, race-based.
College admission.
College admissions, race-based decisions are basically unlawful now. The truth is, the implications for everybody else is still being figured out. Again, it is my recommendation that the language is unnecessary because it really it doesn't have any actual effect. Whoever is going to be in that position is going to report to the superintendent. In some ways, it's the language of the policy is duplicative of other processes that we have, like the 0-100s. There's multiple ways to complain about any equal and unlawful treatment, and those would end up with the superintendent, the chief of human capital, or your general counsel, right? Who works on those type of issues every day. And so I don't believe that the language adds anything. The position doesn't actually exist. I think the chief of human capital provided a very thoughtful and extensive response in the question log, which was basically reiterated that he leads the diversity and equity kind of initiatives and does so in a lawful way. And so I don't
Excuse
think the
me.
language adds anything. If anything, I think it potentially again attracts. I heard the president. People sue us for all kinds of things, but because it doesn't add anything, I don't believe it's necessary, and I believe the edit is the right one for the district to make. Thank you.
Commissioner Griffin, Vice President LeBron has her hand raised as well.
Thank you, Rahima. We do have Vice President LeBron. I do apologize again. I was signaled by our the tech over there. So go ahead, Vice President LeBron. I do apologize again. Go ahead.
No, it's okay. I'm glad I'm getting to speak after Adrian because I do agree with General Counsel and his position and the why. And to his point, there's a lot of things we have written in policy that are either already addressed in other policies or the law addresses, and really practices and culture address it too, because I know they're referencing that if people have a complaint, they can go to general counsel, to the superintendent, or to human resources. But as board members, we all have experienced those issues coming to board members too. So it doesn't stop or start because of a policy either. That's just sort of community practice and culture around here. So to Adrian's point, and then to President Elliott's point, I would caution that I do think we are going to have to get more information from our state electeds about what's happening at the federal level and the impact coming down. And to General Counsel's point, that was one particular case, but I do believe that we are actually in open litigation around a case around this right now. So that's all I'll say for now, and I'll ask General Counsel. I'll do a follow-up with him to debrief all of us in an executive session. But I do want to caution that there's a lot of rapid changes happening, not just because of a new president coming in, but it has been slowly happening with laws being overturned and decisions being done by the Supreme Court. So to that end, I just would uplift and support that and still encourage people to speak up and speak out and to do it as they feel comfortable to going to the people that they do. Thanks.
Thank you, Vice President LeBron. Is there any other questions or discussions regarding the DEI?
I would just say, Commissioner, okay. Just want to say, Commissioner Griffin, that just lost my train of thought.
Take your time.
That in my gut, I wouldn't mind having that role in there, but I'm looking at well, this is what I was going to say. There's also the recourse of going to the EEOC. So if anyone feels that there is some discrimination, they also have that vehicle as well. But understanding that we don't have it, doesn't seem to be a push to necessarily have that position. I think that I'll submit to what my colleagues and what the superintendent and the general counsel is recommending, so.
Well, I just want to say this. I guess I would have to base my decisions on what do we have a lot of, would we know if we have a lot of cases that have went to the EEOC in reference to our biasness or not being able to be forthright in getting just and being justified in the actions that how people been treated. So I think that to me would be an issue. You know, are there people that have been wrongly accused, attacked, and of things of this nature by administration within this district? And that is why, you know, they went to the EEOC and things, and that's why. So these are my concerns. So if we have somebody in there that is biased, it's not the superintendent that is run by the board, and then we have the human capital that, you know, it brings about some type of relief to someone. So I'm gonna let Commissioner Simmons speak, and this is just my opinion. Go ahead.
No, understood, understood. And so this position can exist, but it doesn't necessarily have to exist in a policy, am I understanding that right?
Based on the conversation that I heard, and I'm sure that, I believe that Chief Miller said the position, that title does not exist, that's not a job. It is a role that is taken on by the entire HC and their commitment, that's where the DEI part,
Oh,
so
he's
the
saying, oh, we've
conversation.
got this, and
We
this is
don't
our
have an
culture
affirmative
in
action
HC.
officer.
And so I would have to say, you know, I don't know. Oh, that's an interesting conversation. And I would have to say that, we need to continue this conversation, and I don't even know if it needs to be an executive. I don't know how this conversation goes, but let me just say tokenism is real. Let me just say that, DEI can either be real or it can be a game, right? And so it depends on where you're walking in at. And so that's a tight one for me because, and I'm trying to be careful with my words. So I'm going to caution myself because I can probably go there right about now.
I respect that.
DEI and tokenism is real. And so we can put all the pretty words together, and we can even put somebody that looks like what they say it is. And it doesn't mean that it's being honored. It doesn't mean that it's being uplifted. And so it takes a lot more than just a title and a role to actually execute DEI.
Right.
So, we
agree
need
with
to
what
have
you're
some
saying.
continued conversation.
Yeah, we can table it. I just want to make sure that I get Commissioner Patterson in, and then President Elliott, and we'll end it with you.
I can't remember exactly where I read it, but back in 2014, when I worked downstairs, that was a requirement, and I don't know who it was through, whether it was through title, whatever. Again, it's been many years, but I brought that to the attention of Lori Baldwin when she was the director down there, that wherever it was written, that it was almost like mandatory that we had a diversity, equity, and inclusion officer. And that was pushed to the side. But yeah, there was a requirement that, and I'll dig through it, dig back, and I will do that for this board to see exactly where that was. I know I disregarded a lot of my information from 2014, but I'm sure I can dig it up. But that was a requirement that we actually established an office or a person that headed up, DI.
Commissioner Griffin, Commissioner Simmons just triggered something for me. And I've mentioned this in a documentary that I was being interviewed for last night. We have to keep in mind also that Rochester is the most racist city of its size in this nation. That's what the report says. It is the most racist city. And so to Commissioner Simmons, what she's feeling, and then, do we need this position? But I just want to put that out there on the table for discussion as well. Rochester, the data shows, Rochester is the most racist city of its size in this nation. Thank you, Commissioner.
Okay, I'm going to let it end with Superintendent Demario Strickland.
Thank you, Chairwoman Griffin. Two things that I just wanted to say prior to ending the conversation. One, the functionality of DEI and protecting the rights of workers, so on and so forth, should be a function of the Chief of Human Capital in general. We have to look at the position and not the persons in our decision-making. That's one. And then number two, I want to, I have your note about capturing how many different cases ended up going to the what is it, EOC?
EEOC.
EEOC, because I would like to know that data too. So I'll definitely get a response to that question. So thank you.
You're welcome. And I'm going to request that if we could table this for further discussion, maybe in another meeting, not necessarily today. Can we do, is that possible? Can we table this or?
Can I ask for some clarification?
Go ahead, Raheem.
Yeah, so the discussion or the vote that was supposed to happen tonight was in relation to the highlighted portions in the policy language around removing the affirmative action
Right.
or reorganizing that because that position doesn't exist. You're
Right.
saying that you want to table that specific conversation, or you
Yes.
want to table a larger conversation around DEI in the district? Because I'm hearing a lot of
I don't-
intertwined conversation.
I don't
I'm not
want that
clear.
to be removed if that's part of that policy, because that's gonna be an issue. That's the verbiage that's in there, and we want to make sure that we understand what this is going to entail before we remove it. From my understanding, we want to, if that's removed, that's going to be a problem, because that's
So
going to
ca-
now put that under the purview of the superintendent and the Human Capital Committee if an issue of that such comes into play.
So I hope I didn't misspeak. I wasn't suggesting that DEI was being removed. I was just referring to the terms in the specific title affirmative action officer, which is a position that does not exist.
But it's still present, but it's not, it's still an open, it's a title that's there, it just hasn't been filled. It's from my understanding.
I'll digress to the superintendent
Yeah,
on that
and-
one then, because that,
Yeah, it hasn't been, and we've had that discussion prior. If you go back to the other meetings that we had regarding the affirmative action, it's a position that just has not been filled. It has not been removed, and that was when Dr. Peluso was present. We can go back to that meeting and review that meeting, and that's what that was all about. I clearly remember this actually being discussed prior, and that's what it was. So maybe we need to table it to make sure that we have the wording correctly, because I do remember in the previous meeting about this affirmative action, and I'll go back to my notes as well, that this position was there, but it had not been filled.
As far as I'm aware, the position does not exist. And the current language says Chief of Human Capital or designee. I mean, so this person would report to someone. And who would that, are we talking creating a new position that would be a direct report to the board? Because, again, the position doesn't exist. And I don't believe there's a civil service title that has such a position. So, again, the Chief of Human Capital assumes those responsibilities as a Chief of Human Capital should. And it also says or designee. And you know, if the board wants some increase or different emphasis, I think that is a conversation to have with the superintendent. And you know, maybe come budgeting, you know, that those conversations happen. But it's not a position that currently exists. I think it was an oversight when you know, to the last iteration of the policy that it wasn't struck out then.
Adrian, this was before me and you, when the affirmative action piece was here. So as far as this position is concerned, it didn't have DEI, but affirmative action was here and in play at the district. I've spoken to people in reference to it. So what I would like us to do, if we could, is to table this and come back to it, and maybe we need to speak to it outside of this arena. But I think it is important for us to address this and not lose sight of what it actually means and what it is conveying. And to Superintendent, DeMario's information, he's going to gather that information. Once we have more information, I think we can make a decision. I think we need to base our decision on data, facts, on how much do we have, how many people are going outside of to resolve issues regarding issues that go under the affirmative action. I do see a hand raised for Vice President LeBron, and I want to end this. I want this to come full throttle because we've been on it a little bit too long. But go ahead, Vice President LeBron.
No, I just wanna, I support tabling this. Again, I just feel a little confused tonight, but I'm also not feeling my best.
Okay, I
So,
appreciate that.
I just wanna, and I support tabling for one, for more information, and two, for clarity, because I don't ever recall this being a position either, especially since I've been on the board. Um, and then also, if an employee goes outside of the district to report an EEOC or like a human rights, Division of Human Rights issue, that actually goes to legal, and legal then informs us through through executive sessions. I do think like this is a conversation that can also be had for clarity around that. And maybe that's more of a question that goes to legal,
Okay,
because they would know the answer of how many, employees have gone and filed. So I support tabling it so we can
thank you.
get clarity, and then also even clarity on what meeting you're referencing so that we all can review it
Okay.
to get clarity there too. Thank
Okay.
It
you.
was the August
I do,
policy meeting.
I appreciate that, thank you. So I'm recommending that we table this, and if you want to get the show of hands to see if we can, if everyone agrees to table it.
Gotta do a motion.
Motion, you need to ask
I
for
need a motion. Do I have a
So
motion
moved.
to table?
So
Motion,
moved.
okay, thank you.
Hold on.
Okay, I got Patterson and Malloy.
I think General Counsel's trying to weigh in.
So is it to a specific time, or is it indefinitely?
Right.
So like the next policy meeting, next board meeting?
Team meeting?
Okay.
Because we need to get the information. We need to make sure we have all the information. So, thank you.
If I could share to commissioners that currently on your calendar, the next policy meeting is in February. However, remember, you're reviewing committee diets, and so it may not be at that meeting. If you all don't move forward with a policy, it would be in a work
All right.
session or otherwise.
Okay, thank you.
But is that just for clarity on what the motion is though, right?
Yeah,
Are you mo-
to table it, yep, to the next policy meeting, that'd be fine. Thank you.
Or did you want to see it sooner than the next policy meeting?
If we have the information that we need, because I'm gonna research it as well. So if we can get all the information needed for you, and then we can speak and email, then absolutely, we can bring it up before then. That's fine with me. That's fine with me. I just want to make sure that we have all the information before we make a sound decision and then have to backpedal. I don't want us to have to do that. That's my main concern. Is it referencing the DEI? Because I don't want to address that anymore, because we're going to table.
But you didn't take a vote, and after the motion,
Hold on one
there's a
second.
questioning period, so you never took a vote. And there's a questioning
We
period, so I
moved
have
to
a question.
table, we did move to table.
You never took a vote.
Okay, we have, can I show a vote to table this?
Can I ask a question before we table?
No, I don't want
And my
any
vote
more
will be no.
questions.
My vote for tabling will be no.
Isaiah, please,
My
we're
vote
trying to,
is no.
as a chairperson, I'm asking for a point of privilege, I'm asking
I'm
you to.
asking for a question, and after a
So-
motion,
so
there's
again-
a time.
but
Commissioners,
we've had a
please,
good-
I'll allow legal counsel to take care of it.
Commissioners, please, is there I'm hearing a motion, and after a motion, there is an opportunity for
Thank you.
discussion. So I think you make the motion to postpone until the next policy meeting, that's what I heard. So motion,
We did the motion already.
was there, clerk,
You
did you
have
get a
to
motion and a
vote.
second? Did you hear
Yes.
the?
I heard a motion to table it. It was not specific, and that's when you interjected and asked about dates. And so I'm just trying to get clarity on a couple of things.
We do it to the next date, and if we have the information before then, me and council, we said that he was sending me an email. We just want to make sure we have all the information.
So, Commissioner
and then we can
Griffin,
address it at the next.
Do you want to do the next policy meeting or the next upcoming available? Like, when did you want to do
We
it?
have all the information. It doesn't matter to me as long as we have all the information, then we can address it. I just want to make sure that we cross our Ts and dot our Is. I'm sorry, I don't have my mic.
So-
I
so
just
I-
want to make sure that we have all the information so that we're, like what Vice President LeBron is saying, we're all just want to have clarity. So that I'm just want to have clarity as well as the others so that we are not backpedaling. That's our biggest concern.
So Commissioner, if I can assist then with the motion, it's a motion to bring it to the next available meeting. but no later than the next policy meeting.
That's correct.
Okay. That's the motion, clerk. Does that work
Yes.
for you?
That would be fine. So I heard Commissioner Malloy seconded. Commissioner Patterson's not here. I didn't hear him.
He seconded the second motion. He just went to, I guess, to the men's room. He walked out.
I made the motion.
Motion, excuse
Yeah,
me.
it was
Commissioner.
Patterson and Malloy.
And then there was no vote taken, though.
Okay, and so now the Commissioner Santiago does get an opportunity for discussion.
Okay, go ahead.
Thank you. So for tabling, I'm just wondering for the administration, is this going to be holding anything back, when it comes to this policy not being passed in time?
No, if you look at some of the contents, those are things that we're legally obligated to do. If someone makes a complaint, we have to move on it. We can't retaliate against workers. This is not going to stop the work. I did say that I was interested in, the EEOC process and how many different positions actually have gone through. But just know that if we go deeper with, another report, more than welcome to get that, but something that's taken away from our student goals.
Yeah, and so I also with that, I'm seeing that this was tabled before August 6th, where there was a question about the officer. The answer is here, and now we're back to where we were in the beginning. And so I don't see why we have to table this in any way, because it looks like the question that was asked on August 6th, which might be the policy date, the committee meeting that she was talking about, that we have to go back and review. The answer is there. Of course, we all want, affirmative action. We want people who can work with our staff. But between the previous proposed policy change and this policy change, the only difference I see is chief of human capital or designee. And so I think there's just been so much shot out there at this moment between the affirmative action officer and, it's confusing, but I also don't see why it has to be tabled.
Yeah, so can I get some clarity too, real quick? Because I think I'm like slowing down and just trying to absorb this again. So the response from the board on August 6th was saying something about, boom, an affirmative action officer to ensure something aligned with the intent of policy 9110. And the reality is, the response from administration was to inform us that this particular position never existed. This work has been happening, and this is the commitment. We do not have an affirmative action officer.
It has not, I'm sorry.
So that's what I'm hearing the response say, right?
But it has not been happening.
No, I'm not questioning that. I'm just.
You just talking out loud?
I'm speaking to, yes, of course I'm speaking out loud, but I'm speaking to the point of the information on the screen. And so I'm just trying to have an intelligent understanding and comprehend, when we talk about literacy, what we're reading. And that is telling me that the board at one point made reference to an affirmative action officer, and the administration was informing us that position does not exist. The work, regardless of where we stand with that, has been happening, but we don't have an affirmative action officer.
Right.
Right?
That's my understanding. Again, the position may have existed a very long time ago, but it is not, I couldn't tell you not since I've been with the district. It's been several years. I've never encountered it.
Right. Can I interject for a moment, just to provide some clarity? So the response you're seeing, I see why there's some disconnect, right? The response that the board had on August 6th is because the original policy, back all the way to 1998 version, included that statement you see down there related to an affirmative action officer. When the policy went through revisions, the recommendation was to remove the term of affirmative action officer because one does not exist in this district. Not that the work is not happening, but that specific title that is called out in that policy does not exist in our district. And so it was to make it align to what happens now, which is where you see that it's the superintendent and the chief of human capital. So the conversation you all are having right now is around, if that affirmative action officer is removed, as was proposed back in August, can you update the language to reflect also the correct titles, which would be chief of human capital instead of, supervising director of human resources?
Honestly speaking, I just want to say this. The administration would be that of the purview of the superintendent and his staff. We are the board. So let's put that into play here. The administration is saying to remove that, and that administration falls under the superintendent purview. So what we as a board want to do is the question. So how do we want to address this as a board? What can we foresee happening if something happens in reference to affirmative action? How are we going to address it if it's coming from the superintendent or human capital? So I think we need to put that in perspective as well, because if something comes up and we're not addressing it from the board perspective, and it's an administration that is making the response, and they're saying this is what they feel, we are not the administration, we are the board. So I want to make sure we understand that. So go ahead, Rahima, were you going to say something?
No, I just see Commissioner Lloyd's hand. I was done.
It's okay. Is it okay if I speak?
Go right
Okay,
ahead,
thank you.
Commissioner
Just waiting
Malloy.
to be
Everybody
called
else
on.
is talking,
Just
so
trying
you
to
might as
follow
well
the
too.
rules. I actually would like to withdraw the motion on this. So I don't know how to do that officially. I withdraw the motion. I think that I'm in favor of removing that language as general counsel has advised.
So Commissioner, I mean, technically, once the discussion has happened, the motion shouldn't be withdrawn.
Okay.
So I think if you change your mind, you vote not to postpone.
Okay.
And then the board would have to have an actual vote on it. So
Okay.
the motion currently in front of the board is whether to postpone this to the next available meeting, but no later than the next policy meeting. And so the board can now vote whether to postpone it, or, and if that vote fails, then the board will have to vote on the motion as is.
It's so hard because there's two conversations happening. One is the technicality of this position that didn't exist and moving forward with this vote. The other part is, I think, a more institutional conversation where there's concerns around diversity, equity, and inclusion, or just racism, or whatever is being put out here right now. That's a deeper conversation that I feel like I'm hearing folks are looking to have.
Yeah, it's a guardrail
Those are two
discussion.
separate conversations.
What my concern is that we have to look at it, this is an administration response. The administration is separate from the board. So we have to make sure that when we say something and we are governing this, that this is what we want. If we remove this, this is not under our purview. This would now be under the purview of the human capital and the superintendent. If something happens and something comes across our room and we have to go into executive session, hold on, Commissioner Malloy, 1 second. If we have to go back in executive session to address any concerns in reference to after this policy is removed, that's going to fall on our shoulders. So we have to be very cognizant of what we're doing here. We are removing the responsibility from us, but it can come back and bite us. That's the bottom line. So, I mean, you vote the way you want to vote, but I'm just putting it out there as how it's going to be looked at. We can remove this and not have somebody to be the middleman and something come up, and then we're going to be, we got to pay out more money? We got to do this? So these are the things we are privy to. Okay, go ahead, Mr. Commissioner Santiago.
I just think to an extent there's a lot of just misinformation that's going out there, because at the end of the day, there's laws that we have to follow. There's discrimination, tactics that we have to stay away from. And if it's not stayed away from, we're getting sued. And that's just what happens. And so, of course, it's our responsibility, but the responsibility isn't going anywhere as far as the affirmative action. The affirmative action is still there because there was never a position in the first place, is from what I'm hearing. And so we already have a responsibility legally, and this is what we're talking about with the policies of rewriting policies or putting words in policies when there's already legislation that exists out there that we have to listen to anyways. And so for me, it's just, I feel like there's a lot of misinformation that's put out there that saying that if we vote against it, we're saying that we're against affirmative action, and that's just not the truth. The truth, I'm speaking, but the truth is that we are saying that we still have to do the responsibility, but we don't need the language in there. So I don't see much changes here, as long as it's still being done. And if it's not still being done, then it's going to come across our desk, and we're going to hold the accountability. We're going to hold accountability to the administration.
Okay, I want to definitely end this. I'm going to go to Vice President LeBron. I'm sorry, Vice President LeBron, but Commissioner Malloy, Vice President LeBron, and then we're gonna try to wrap this up. I want everybody to say what they want to say, but I want to be fair. But go ahead, Commissioner Malloy.
Yeah, thank you so much. And
Welcome.
similar to just what Commissioner Santiago was saying, I think that by changing this language and removing that verbiage does not mean we don't care about what you're talking about. And I think that this is really an important conversation, and I agree with you entirely on that. And I think that's where our guardrail discussions, when we are working with our governance coaches, we still need to come up with guardrails. And it sounds like that is a value that we need respected and that we want to monitor as a board and not just leave it up to administration, if I'm hearing you correctly. And I value that, and I think that that is something, when we go to set our guardrails, that is going to be encompassed perhaps in one of the guardrails that we set.
I respect guardrails, but sometimes guardrails and policies are two different things. Taking something out of a policy for me that is privy to some things that we can get sued about is very important to me. So I don't want to keep debating on whether it was in our district or not in our district. It's written in here. So it came into play somewhere. So at the end of the day, I think we're beating a dead horse because we're going around in the circles. We all have good points and good value to what we're trying to say. Nobody's trying to say that the district is racist. We are just saying that we want to make sure and ensure that we have people and things in place that are going to govern everybody and make people feel comfortable in speaking and not feeling retaliated against or anything else. So let's make that very clear. We're not saying that. So I don't want nobody in the public to think that. I want them to make sure that we understand we're trying to make something balanced in the district, and whatever works for our district as a whole, that's what we need. So let's move forward after Vice President LeBron speaks. Thank you for being patient.
Yeah, thank you. I just want to add, I agree with both Commissioner Santiago and Malloy's points, and also Commissioner Simmons as well tonight. But I also, oddly enough, do agree with Commissioner Griffin tonight as well, that and I just think that there is some confusion tonight around this conversation. I think it can easily be confusing to the public listening to it about what we're actually discussing and how critically important the conversation is as well. And I support still tabling it. I can't go on camera because I'm sick, y'all, but I'm here tonight participating as much as possible. But I do think we should table until at least next week. And I don't think we should drag it on either, but to give opportunity and time to clear any confusion and bring clarity to the points that remain unclear tonight. Okay. And I think that will also help the public as well, because it is, I'm watching it tonight. Like, I'm watching you guys, like other people are watching it tonight. And so I'm not there. And it is a little bit in a different context when you're watching. And I just want to point that out. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you very much, Vice President LeBron. And if we can go ahead and vote on this now to table it until the next meeting, in hopes that we can get a resolution.
I motion to table this.
Okay, I motion.
Already
I'm sorry, not the
Well, in a
motion to vote.
second,
I meant to
already, we
vote.
just need to vote.
Motion, we want to vote. Can we show our hands, a vote, or somebody can say vote, voting to table this? Aye?
Nay.
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, thank you. The ayes have it. Thank you very much. And the next topic would be the 9260, and that has to do with, go ahead, Raheem, I'll go ahead and let you read that out, and then I'll let everybody know what I think about it, about the change in the wording.
Commissioner Griffin. So policy 9260 is the conditional appointment and emergency conditional appointment, and this is related to student safety. So you had this conversation back at your April 25th business meeting. There was no discussion. This was a new and required policy. However, it was sent back to the committee at the request of General Counsel for further review. He was able to review that, and the proposed language you see on the right is General Counsel's recommendation. I'll read it, and then Adrian, you may want to chime in. Paragraph 3 should read, no district employee who holds a conditional or emergency conditional appointment will teach a class or provide services to students in a space without a vision panel on the door unless the building principal has provided express prior permission to do otherwise.
Okay, I just want to add, and President Elliott can jump in if she'd like. I was at the conference in Albany, and we had a gentleman there that lost a son. And part of that was a window that they were able to see through, and seeing the children in there. So this verbiage on here would bother me with the vision instead of it being blurred, because he is requiring that the doors have, and I want to make sure, President Elliott, if I'm correct, that it be blurred. It shouldn't be something what you can see through because of someone coming in and maybe doing a shooting, and they can see the individual through the window. And
I think I was there for that
Yeah,
part.
yeah.
It was a pretty intense,
Intense, yeah.
and I couldn't stay for
So
most of it, but I think I do
this
remember that.
verbiage can't be in here like this. We should not have a vision window, or it shouldn't be vision, where you can see clear. It should be a blurred window. It should, right, if I'm,
Well, that's
State
what he
monitor?
was recommending for down there, but I need to make sure I'm understanding the context here about that.
It was a recommendation from
A
General
vision
Counsel,
panel.
so I would.
In the
Yeah,
response-
so this was actually, this comes from regulation, it's part of like the code. So there does have to be that panel there pursuant to building code. So in my opinion, this is not, and it's actually a safety thing, so you don't have, we're talking about conditional appointments, so they're not in closed rooms that you can't see into with the students. So it's supposed to help with student safety, not prohibited.
okay. Now, is this in a room with just like a social worker, or is that type of setting, or is it
Like a
in a
substitute,
classroom?
right?
I'm just trying to make clarity of how these panels are working.
It says no emergency will teach a class or provide services to students, so it could be at a
Because
variety
it's
of rooms.
multiple students, so I think we need clarity to know as far as the safety and what, as far as that concerned, is it multiple students or is it just one student and one teacher? Because if that's the case, that's something different. But if you're talking about a classroom full of kids, according to what I'm saying, the safety issues, they're recommending that we have a blurred vision panel and not just a clear vision panel. So do we have clarity on?
But that
if
was
it's-
also Florida's law. Let me put that out
Yeah,
there too.
it is,
was
but I'm just
Florida.
concerned
Yeah.
because, that brought something to the, when I see this, because of how intense that meeting was with him, I want to make sure that we are doing what we need to do. God forbid, we have a situation like they did. Go ahead, I'm going to start with Commissioner Simmons and then Commissioner Santiago and then to the superintendent.
I, for one, personally believe that we should be able to see into classrooms at all times. And that's individual, that's collective. I do recognize what you're saying as far as external, threats. Thank you for that language. External threats, wanting to have definitely some safety procedures and making sure that we continuously look at how we can enhance those. But as far as building safety, even when I served inside school buildings, it was always practice of myself, staff members that I served with, that we kept the door ajar. If you're one-on-one with a student, anyone walking by should be able to see you clearly, because you don't want any room for question or confusion. Even with my own son working in the district, I often emphasize those rules to him, like make sure if you're with a child that people can see you, that, so that is just definitely a necessary measure, and including the classroom, the teacher that may have 20 students in their classroom. Yeah, you should be able to see, and I think that actually would help with safety on some levels. Yeah.
But that's a good point to Commissioner Griffin. I think that, it's.
Got to see that to understand what we.
Well, the other piece about that is because if it is covered, if it is shaded for external threats, that would help to prevent that from happening. But at the same time, on the other hand, having clear a vision of what's going on in the classroom is also important too, because you don't know what may go on in the classroom that, something shaded may prevent us from really seeing. So I understand both sides in
And I
all
totally
honesty.
get it, because I
Yeah.
went through a simulation with the city real quick, and I'm get off the mic. But I went through a simulation at the city, and the gentleman walked through and they did like a simulated gun threat or what have you. And the area that I was in was all glass. And so that, they basically said, your whole team would have been gone if there was a viable threat. And my office did not have any windows and the door shut. I could hide in the office, and maybe if I got the team in there. So I do understand what you're saying in that regard, but yeah.
And I also want to note that I think too that it was the position of the window. So the window, the glass, the vision panel, council, it was also, it depended on where it was actually at on the door, how they looked in to see the class, like, so that also played a part as well. But I just wanted to just note that for the record, that was a concern. Go ahead, Commissioner Santiago.
Yeah, I just want to say I agree with Commissioner Simmons and President Elliott, because there are two sides to it, of course. But I think in correspondence with having these vision panels, which are important for the classroom, that when we're making our safety plans, that we also have plans when we are in those circumstances on how to keep our children safe when those circumstances happen. So whether that's having something to block that area or having a certain part of the classroom for them to huddle in. I just think that it's needed on both sides, but there's a way to meet both needs by ensuring that we have a safety plan behind the other side and ensuring that we have the vision panels to ensure that there's safety in the classroom.
I'll just add one more comment. So again, with these policies, we do, typically, before they come to the board, typically they're shared with administration, and we have experts in the field that provide input and feedback. And we have a coordinator, a health and safety coordinator who, provided specific input on a building code requirement as required by SCD for there to be vision panels. So not only is it required statutorily, but I think to alleviate, some of the concerns raised, the following language says, unless the building principal has provided express permission to do otherwise. So it sounds like in some exceptional circumstances that it wasn't necessary, then the principal has a little bit of autonomy to make a call as needed. So I think both things are accounted for in the policy language as is.
Okay. Thank you.
I'm sorry. I'm all set. That was just my, I'm sorry, the superintendent, I'm sorry. I do apologize.
No, I just wanted to let the board members not to lose sight of this actual policy. It's not necessarily talking about like outside threats and things of that nature. It's talking about internal mechanisms as to, keeping the child safe as well as keeping the staff member safe in the event that they're behind closed doors. But I do want to let the commissioners know in our safety procedures and whatnot, we do have lockdown procedures, lockout procedures. Windows have to be uncovered. And in the event that there is a window in a room, there's procedures where students and staff have to hide or get out of plain sight of those windows so that it, you can't tell that folks are in.
Okay, I just for clarity for the public, I was not in no means saying that that's not what we were saying, and part of what the superintendent was saying. I was just clearly making a statement in reference to the vision panels and how it can play out in both aspects. So I don't want the public to think that I was trying to say anything different than that. The vision panels can play a role on both sides of the fence, and we do have things in place for our children and for our staff to be safe in the Rochester City School District. Thank you.
Commissioner
So we need
Griffin?
to do a motion on that? Want a motion to move that? A motion?
Second.
Okay. Smooth. Any discussions? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion has been carried. And then we have, the next one would be policy 2300, board bylaws. Is that, Rahima, you want to jump in, please?
Yes, ma'am. So Commissioners, as you may recall, you all have postponed several components. Oh, I'm sorry, prior to jumping into policy 2300, just to provide clarity, the next steps on 90, on the policies that you all just discussed is that they are going to be forwarded out and they will follow the policy adoption process and should be voted on at the February business meeting. Okay. Thank you. Moving along, policy 2300, you all have tabled different components and portions of this policy. So at this point, I'm just going to go through some of the items that were expected to come forward for this meeting that had been previously tabled or postponed. So next slide, Tom, thank you. At your 8-6 policy meeting, you had some discussion related to this 2300, and the following language was tabled by you all for further research into options in relation to interpreters. So the policy stated that individuals requesting an interpreter should sign up to speak at least 5 business days in advance to allow the district sufficient time to secure an interpreter and should cancel requests at least 24 hours in advance to avoid the district taking on extra charges. After recommendations from General Counsel, the new policy language will provide more flexibility, and it would read, if possible, individuals requesting an interpreter should try to sign up to speak as many days in advance as possible to allow the district time to secure an interpreter for their specific language and should cancel requests at least 24 hours in advance if they become aware they will not require an interpreter or will not be attending the meeting. In any event, the district will do its best to secure interpreters as necessary to facilitate communications with speakers.
Any questions on that? Anyone? Commissioner Malloy?
Not so much a question, but just a comment that I support the proposed policy language.
Okay. Any other questions regarding that change?
Yeah, this is the one that we're saying that to get a interpreter within 24 hours as opposed to up to, 5 business days.
That's correct.
Well, just note that if it's only 24 hours, we may not be able to have someone that quickly. So I just want to point that out. I mean, we can, if we can, we can, but also understand that if we can't, because there's not sufficient time provided, then there will not be an interpreter. So I want to just make sure that we open that up for discussion as well. So,
They can
and
also,
particularly, if
Go
I
ahead,
can just say
sorry,
this,
I'm
yeah,
sorry,
particularly if
President.
if it's interpreters needed for, some of our non-Hispanic speaking or non-English speaking, our, am I not saying it correctly? Am I incorrect?
I think it's saying that if you require an interpreter, make sure that you sign up 5 business days, to your point, so that they have time to plan. However, if you're not going to, that you should cancel the request at least
cancel the
24 hours.
request, okay.
Yep, in advance.
I'm sorry,
New
Commissioner,
language.
that's not what it says. That's what it said before, and the board did not want to advance, did not want that time limit. And so therefore, we came back with a
changed
version that provided a lot more flexibility. It doesn't set a
Right.
specific time. It just says is as many days in advance as possible. So
Okay.
President Elliott is actually very 100% correct in what you're saying.
Okay, all right.
now that also, they can also bring their own interpreter, is that correct? Rahima, they can also
Oh,
bring their
we've
own
never-
interpreter, they don't have to?
That no one's ever asked.
Okay, so just for the record, to the community, they can bring their own interpreter, correct?
They could.
Okay,
yes.
all right.
I don't see why not.
Okay, I just want them to know that.
Yeah,
So
there
this
may
not-
be adults who don't speak the language, but the children may.
Yes.
So it may be that
Yes.
opportunity for
So
them to
that
bring
is
the
an
children to
opportunity for
interpret.
you to still speak if you have your own interpreter. So I just want the community to know that. Thank you. So there's no questions on that at all, right? Any other questions regarding that? Okay, go ahead, Rahima.
Okay. So regarding the planning meetings with the superintendent, so this is under the officers of the board, the president, so it's section 3A. The current policy language states the president shall meet with the superintendent of schools on a regular basis at mutually convenient times to discuss and coordinate the presentation of resolutions for consideration by the board at business meetings and to review the implementation of board directives and policies. The board may designate other board members to meet with the president and superintendent of schools on a regular basis, Minutes of the planning meeting with the superintendent shall be provided to all board members. Proposed board action options. The president shall meet with the superintendent of schools on a regular basis at mutually convenient times to discuss and coordinate the presentation of resolutions for consideration by the board at a business meeting and to review implementation of board directives and policies. The president or superintendent may assign a designee from their staff to meet on their behalf. The board may designate other board members to meet with the president and superintendent of schools on a regular basis. Board members will be provided the meeting schedule prior to the meeting. Minutes of the planning meeting with the superintendent shall be provided to all members of the board. So the addition would be the highlighted portions for discussion.
I don't have any discussion. I don't have any questions on that. Does anybody have any questions? No? No discussion? All in favor?
Do we have a motion for it? I don't think we have a
No, I'm
motion.
sorry, we got one more to do. Sorry, my fault. We got one more. Go ahead, Ryan. I do apologize. One more to do.
So committees of the board, this is under section 4A. The current policy states that the following committees shall be standing committees of the board: policy development and review, community and intergovernmental relations, finance and resource allocation, audit, human capital, and equity and student achievement. So the proposed option, based on your October 28th work session with CGCS and your committee diet discussion, the following committees shall be standing committees of the Board of Education: audit, equity and student achievement, policy development and review. So just to go back for a second. Go ahead, Commissioner Griffin.
We discussed these removals pending, sunsetting them pending clarity and getting everything in order to sunset them, not to do it and move this swiftly on it, because there are still some open and unanswered questions in each one of these committees. So to move this forward without resolution in each one of these would not be feasible for us at this time. We have still things that need to be addressed under each one of these committees. These committees were created because of the not having transparency within the district. I know we are trying to move forward. I do understand that, but at the end of the day, we still have issues in each one of these areas that need to be addressed before we can sunset any committee. So that is just my take on it. I will go to Commissioner Santiago and then move down.
Yeah, so I just want to also say that during the work session when we met with the Governance Council, I think that we came up with a pretty sustainable and detailed plan. Of course, there's still some background details that have to be figured out, but we agreed that finances will be focused on in the main business meeting or work sessions. We agreed community and intergovernmental relations, that the agenda will continue, the breakfast will continue, but it will be a responsibility instead of a committee. And we agreed that human capital wasn't focused on student outcomes. And so I think that this makes a lot of sense to me, and I'm in support of it.
Anyone else have any questions or concerns about this issue in reference to moving this forward?
If I could just comment for a moment or ask for clarity,
I
guess.
can't hear you. I'm sorry, Rahima, can you
Yep.
speak?
If I could just for a moment. So in in the November business meeting and in the prior meeting, I indicated to you all that the recommendation form that was sent to you based on the 1028 policy conversation that kind of mapped out how committees could look moving forward, that is going to continue to be on your agenda for discussion. So it was on the business meeting agenda. We didn't have any discussion about it. It will be on the agenda next week at the special meeting, and then again at the December December business meeting, where if you all want to move forward with a different format, you would need to vote because these are contained in your policy, like in your bylaws. And so you need to remove those committees if you don't want to have them come January. So that's why this conversation is here. And so there's hopes that there will be discussion when that item is on the agenda to answer and resolve the questions you're referencing, Commissioner Griffin.
Yeah, I guess my only concern, if we go back to that meeting, is that there was a lot of areas what we still need to cover in order to sunset these committees, and we have not addressed any of that. I don't know what meeting we addressed any of those issues, the concerns that we had as board members to move forward and to remove things when we haven't even addressed the issues and concern in each one of these committees that we still have. So I have a problem with shutting things down and not resolving them. We never said that we were not going to address the issues and concerns with each one of these committees before we shut them down. So I guess my question is, when do we address those concerns before we sunset something?
Are you asking me
We
directly?
can't continue to close something out if we haven't, I'm sorry, President Elliott, go
I
ahead.
think your Commissioner Santiago was, his hand was raised before.
Well, I only went to you because I was going down this way, and he already spoke, so you're next.
So I think that it is a way in which, through the work sessions, that we're going to be creating in order to address some of these issues. If we want to do these particular these particular committees, then the ones that we don't want to do, that we are sunsetting, I think the chair can also respond to the work that is to be done, and we can do that work in those work sessions that we're talking about creating, so that nothing is missed and nothing is lost. But this is also to the state monitor's recommendation that we reduce the number of committees that we have, and I get that you agree
Okay.
with that, and that you want to look at this other work, but it doesn't have to get lost. We can do it through those work sessions, whatever is left.
Okay, for me, I respect what you're saying, President Elliott. Once we shut something down, it seems like it goes away. So I want to make sure that we're addressing what is needed before we move forward. It gets swept underneath the rug. We don't want that to happen. So I think the best thing to do, they were created for a reason. So we want to make sure that we don't lose focus of why they were created, because if we do, then we're going to miss something.
Yeah, I'll take the responsibility to making sure that we don't
I
let
just,
these go
that's
by.
my biggest fear. We have to make sure that we're
I'll take
addressing
the
everything.
whatever,
Okay.
and I'll reach out to each chairperson to see what, along with our special assistant to the board, to see what work is needed and how we can address.
Yeah, I would
those.
definitely like, if we could get together and do that, I really would appreciate it, because that's my biggest concern, because there's a lot of open things that we need to address. Commissioner Simmons, I apologize.
And I think we also had some pretty good conversation with with the council and so on around how we were going to go sunsetting it. So there certainly was no conversation of, we're going to sunset these, they're just going to go away, and there goes the baby, with the bathwater. The conversations we had actually mapped out a viable plan of action to not only sunset the committees, but look at what needs to remain and where it would go. And so we have an understanding of equity and student achievement. Once that committee is sunset, there's going to still continue to be report outs and mandatory pieces that we focus on. I think that the better, or the other part of this conversation can just be around identifying some pieces, if there's some concerns that you feel, around some things you think might get lost, kind of identifying those. But there are plans of action that I think we're actively working on. And so the committee going away doesn't mean the work goes away.
Thank you, Commissioner Simmons, I respect that. I'm sorry. Thank you, Commissioner Simmons, and then we have Commissioner Malloy.
Great, thank you. I just want to say I agree with all the sentiments expressed so far, and I understand the concerns. We want to make sure that we're still engaged in that work, as you said. I really liked the robust conversations that we had during the work session and some of the plans that we came up with. There could be plans to sunset 2 more of those committees, right? I think that what we finally agreed upon was that, or I actually learned at that last meeting, was that the only committee that's required by law is audit. See, I learned something at that last meeting. So there are going to be a number of changes that we go through with our coaches in the future. That work still needs to get done, but I think we all had come up with an agreement or an understanding that that work is going to still get done in other meetings, like at our business meeting, et cetera. And I would support that.
I just want to make sure Vice President LeBron doesn't have anything to say at this time. I don't know if her hand is raised.
Her hand is not raised.
It's not, but thank you.
You're welcome. And Commissioner Patterson.
Yeah, I think what Commissioner Simmons was trying to do, and I'm going to say it real quickly, is there's just different ways that the council advises that we can report out. The Council of Great City Schools.
Is there any other questions regarding this proposal?
It would be helpful to board staff if I had clarification around what items you're suggesting are not addressed. I will just bring attention back to the calendar that I created where you all could move to a work session and a business meeting, included every item from every committee as it exists currently that would show up there, including a revamped policy calendar that will allow you all to review all of the policies throughout the calendar year, no more than 5 per month, so per meeting. So I just need some clarity so that we can do our due diligence and bring this item back to you all for decisions.
So you want us to, just for clarification, Rahima, you want us to provide you with the information and clarity of what issues and concerns we have with the different committees? Is that what you're asking?
You made a reference to those concerns. I didn't hear any when we brought it up at the business meeting. No one made any recommendations related to that or brought those up. So it would just be helpful to know what those concerns are, because I'm not sure.
I apologize. I wasn't at the board business meeting due to a family emergency, but I will say that at the meeting with Dr. Hart, at that meeting, where there was a lot of issues and concerns that were addressed during that meeting in reference to the different committees and what we thought should be addressed. So there was, and it wasn't just myself speaking of that. I know President Elliott said some things. We all said different things. I can't remember verbatim everything, but I do know that each committee, there was some form of concern. It's not saying that we don't want to sunset him, and to President Elliott's point, there was concerns, there was issues, and we need to address them. If you want them specifically, I would have to go through and, listen to it again to refresh my memory, but I know within some committees, I already know what I would like to address. There were other issues and concerns as well, though.
A suggestion then, perhaps you could share what your concerns are, and if other commissioners have some, they could chime in.
You mean today? Like, and not at this moment. No, I wasn't at the last meeting. I did not attend the board business meeting. So I would have said something then. I didn't know this was on the board business meeting because I did not attend. I had a family emergency. So this is the first time I'm seeing it because I did not attend that meeting. So you said it was addressed at the board business meeting, right?
It was email that went out to you all, and then it was in the business meeting.
I had a family emergency. I wasn't focused on that at all, so I do apologize. But there was some concerns I had, and I'm gonna have Commissioner Santiago, he has a question.
No, I don't have a question. I just think that during the meeting that all 7 of us were at around the policy diet, or the committee diet, I'm sorry, we decided and we had a robust conversation on where the responsibilities would go moving forward. And so I think some of the information might be lost from certain commissioners, but it's an elongated conversation for a conversation we already had. And this happens a lot. And so I just think that the conversation's already been had and we move forward with what we got.
Is there anything else from anyone else?
Yeah.
Thank you, President Elliott. Go
With
ahead.
me, working with our board clerk, special assistant to the board, I'd like to use that title with her as well, that if there's any remaining agenda items from these committees that we need to discuss, we could do that. Now, so let me ask you, Commissioner Griffin, is that what you are speaking about? That whatever agenda items are left with each of these committees, that we follow through on those agenda items? Is that, am I hearing you
Yeah,
correctly?
the agenda items, and then there was certain concerns with just individual transparency with and things that needed to be, that personally I had concerns with. And like I said, I didn't hear the meeting the last meeting, so I do apologize because I did have something, going on in my family that was more pertinent at
So-
that time.
Definitely. So
Yeah.
if you would be willing to put those concerns
Absolutely.
for each of those committees.
I will.
We'll, and then we can take it from there.
Thank you. And I think we said that just a minute ago that
Yeah.
we would speak.
Yep.
Thank you, President Elliott. Is there any other questions or concerns in reference to this? Okay, can we have a motion? Go ahead, Rahima, you have a
So
question?
the last component of this is just a reminder that the next steps is after this is forwarded out, that it will follow the regular policy adoption process and be voted on in your February business meeting. If the policy committee continues on, your next meeting is February 4th, and there are 2 items from Policy 2300 that you are slated to discuss. It would be the section on leadership resignation and recalls, and then assuming that NYSBA has provided it, an update to the student representative policy to align with all of that new legislation.
When do we have to do that?
So that is slated to come up in your February policy meeting or in a February meeting should you dissolve this committee.
Okay. So can I have a motion? And that would be for 9110, 9260, and 2300.
100,
Well,
Commissioner, you
actually,
already
no,
took
no,
the
no, no, I'm
others.
sorry,
It's
the
just
one we're not
2300.
doing, right?
Just 2,300.
Just 2300, I'm sorry, guys. Have a
Motion?
Motion? Can I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? It carries. Thank you.
Little sidebar.
He said aye. He said aye. Okay.
Board member survey.
So, I would just request everybody complete the board survey. And I just want to add one more thing, just for the public and just for everybody. We have Dr. Rita Gaither that took a group of students from all over to Africa, from Rochester City School District and other places. But I just wanted to applaud her for taking them on that journey to Africa to experience the culture there. So I give Dr. Rita Gaither a hand of applause for doing that, because that was very, very, very good of her to do that. I know as a child growing up, I had the privilege to be one of those children to go on different trips with her, and she definitely takes the bull by the horns to give our kids and our children the adventures of a lifetime. So again, I applaud her. And then now, can I have a motion to end the meeting?
So moved? So moved? We have to do our board member surveys.
Yeah, and I did mention that. I said we'd have to do the board member surveys before I mentioned Dr. Rita Gaither. Can I have a motion by Malloy and
Second?
President Elliott? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, this
Have a
meeting
good
has
night.
been adjourned. Thank you.